Greetings, everyone. Good evening. Happy Monday. As usual, I'll have to look over my PC's calendar to figure out what day of the week it is, but it's Monday, and it's time for another stream. What's up, Goaty? What's up, Brunin G? Helix69, BitBeamCannon, lurkers in chat, VOD viewers. I'm already losing my ability to speak, but that's okay. Yeah, I've got the 7 o'clock laser beam creeping up on us. We've got about 40 minutes to go, but it's getting there. It's getting there. On tonight's stream, Beat 'em Up Watch returns with the special guest collaboration. Mike from BitBeamCannon will be joining the stream very shortly. Hopefully, the technology will allow this to function more or less seamlessly. A little bit outside of my wheelhouse in terms of stream production, but it should probably go all right. Bardic broadcast rating with a huge band of raiders. Welcome, folks. Welcome, folks. Welcome, Running Wild. You're joining us with perfect timing here. We're just about to get started. I'm not gonna give too much of a preamble because I'm sure I just have to repeat it, or I would have Mike repeat a lot of stuff as soon as he's on here. But yeah, we are going to be talking about Metro Siege, the upcoming Amiga, Neo Geo, and PC beat 'em up from BitBeamCannon, a company of whom I am a big fan and have been for quite some time. But I will let Mike explain more about that and try not to ramble. It's like a very unusual experience for me now, trying to be concise and not just ramble on forever. But I'm sure rambling will happen, so don't worry about that. Thank you, the Bard. Greetings, greetings. Welcome, new and returning viewers. Hope you're all doing well. So I'm gonna need a extremely fancy piece of equipment here to avoid terrible audio mishaps, or to the best of my ability anyway. We'll see how this works. And why don't we see? I'm already confused. I've got video up on this one screen that's like super distracting, and then I have music happening, and then I'm trying to figure everything out, but it should be fine. Should be fine. So, dear viewers, bear with me for just a moment as I try to see if I can look, I can get a voice call going. Do I know how to do anything? All right, I'm going to try to get Mike on the line here. Hello, Mike. Hang on. I can hear you. I am not sure if viewers can hear you. I think maybe now they can.
Okay, I'll
Say hello,
keep
Mike.
talking until someone confirms. Uh, hello, everyone. Thanks so much, Jigga, for having me on.
All right, we're all good, it looks like. Thank you,
All
Mike.
right, sweet.
Everything is, well, let's not say everything. Your sound is coming through. So
Awesome.
far so good.
Excellent.
Let me try to bring up my notes. I'm trying to be professional here, so this is not, officially anyway, like an interview or a podcast or anything. It's just
Right.
I'm streaming and I happen to have a guest on with me, and but I'm trying to maintain some veneer of professionalism here. So I try to take some notes for some things that I wanted to talk to you about and ask you about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a pretty loose agenda, but I'll try to follow it. And I figured before we go anywhere else, why don't you very quickly introduce yourself and tell us why you're here?
Yeah. I grew up, I'm sure, much like you, just with video games and loving them. And since I was in my early teens, I was an aspiring pixel artist and knew I just had a love not only for video games themselves, but for the art form of making games. And it's been an obsession my whole life. I was lucky enough to be able to turn that obsession into a career. Interestingly enough, like a lot of my early adult life was during that dead zone where everything had moved to 3D
Mm-hmm.
and pixel art was like a dead art.
Right.
But what was lucky for me is when cell phones were finally powerful enough to start doing basic 2D games of a power level very similar to classic 16-bit
Mm-hmm.
consoles, that's when I was like, okay,
that
I've
was
got this
your
skill
refuge.
set. Yeah, I've got this skill set that very few people have now. And that was my door into the industry. I ended up moving to first New York to work with Gameloft, and then to California to work with Glue Mobile. And
Right.
since then, I've done freelance work with WayForward, Sega, all kinds of cool studios. And now my studio partner, Corey, who I met at Glue Mobile in California, we're busting our butts to try to live the dream and switch over to someday, hopefully, supporting ourselves working full time on the games we want to make for the classic systems that we love. And so I know you. I don't remember the full story. It's, but shout out to Goaty. I think he is Goaty underscore. He's in the
It's
chat.
probably lurking in chat. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think we found Goaty because he played Damon Claw. And in that stream, Goaty mentioned he discovered us and Damon Claw because of you. So that's how we discovered you
Right.
and found out that you had already given Metro Siege a shot. So I really enjoyed both of you guys. I think they're two of my favorite streamers because your attention to detail and your obvious love for not just games, but like I said, the art form of making
Yeah.
games
Yeah.
is very evident, and that's just you could imagine as someone that's like working hard and putting your stuff out there, and you're competing with so many games across so many platforms, including like the ocean of games on Steam. I mean, there's
Yeah. Yeah.
bajillions of great games out there on Steam. So to find people out there that can appreciate the little extra love and little subtleties and nuance that a tiny group of indie developers put into their work is it really recharges our batteries. It's like really encouraging and pretty awesome.
That's
So
cool. I'm glad to
anyway,
hear
so
that.
yeah.
I'm glad to hear it. Now let me pause for just 1 second. I'm going to try to switch
Mhm.
scenes here, and hopefully I don't lose you in the process. It looks like you're still here. All right, good.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you very much for that very brief recap of your life story there, because it actually already answers a few
Yeah.
questions I had. Um,
Nice.
I'm gonna, let's see here if I can get this to work, and I'm gonna bring there we go, BitBeamCannon.com onto the stream, just to give some visual aids for viewers in chat here, not having to just stare at my ugly mug. So this is your company, and you and Corey, plus maybe a few other people here and there, as I understand it. I know your brother is involved here and there, at least. I've seen him lurking in some Twitch chats and what have you. You've got a lot of irons in the fire, it seems.
Yes.
Juggling plenty of projects. And we're going to be focusing primarily on Metro Siege, which is one of the games, I guess we could say, that you're currently running a crowdfunding campaign for. I know Metal Mac formally ended the campaign, but there's still late backer
late exactly
stuff going on. We can kind of cover that in more detail later. But Metro Siege is currently running on Kickstarter, and we're gonna look more on that later. But here's what that looks like, and you can see that there's a link in chat there, and if you type !Metro Siege, you'll get a link to the official Metro Siege page, which has links to everywhere else, including the Kickstarter, if you want to check that out in your own time, dear viewers. This is also a really weird thing. I just have to mentally sort whether I'm talking to them or to you. So bear with me if I'm getting confused or if you're getting confused, but I think we'll get through this.
I'm a viewer too, so that's all right.
All right.
There's a few second delay, but
right. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. So yeah, I had wanted to ask you a little bit about sorry, is Mike's volume. Let me see. I can probably crank this up a little bit.
All right. I think my microphone is maxed, so hopefully
I have more control on my end. So yeah, feel free to let me know if there's other issues with audio or anything else. We can try to tweak it and improve it best we can as we go here.
Absolutely.
But you should be. Let's try to do that. You should be around the same volume as me now, I think.
Testing. How's that, Arcade Ed? By the way, thanks everyone for joining the stream. Very nice. Awesome.
Cool. All right. Thank you. So I'd been sort of what's the polite way of phrasing this? Trying to research BitBeamCannon and your work. As I said, you've got a lot of projects going on, and you had mentioned that you kind of came across me by means of Goaty having streamed Demon Claw. I was a happy backer of that game on Kickstarter. I played the Mega Drive cartridge when I got it. I really enjoyed it. And
thank you very much.
I am very excited about Metro Siege and a lot of other stuff you've got cooking. But you may be surprised to learn, I don't know, that was not, or even games that you were making in general, is not how I first came across you guys and became interested in your work. But rather, I'd come across, and now I have no memory of how this happened exactly, but just thank the algorithm, I guess. But I came across a series of videos that you guys had put up on YouTube talking about pixel art.
Yep. They're called Forensic Pixology. That's the playlist or series or name if anyone wants to search it on YouTube.
Yeah.
But that's awesome.
Yeah, and I should have thought to prepare a link for that. But yeah, long story short.
Well, the nice thing is, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but as you can see right up there on our webpage, there's links to our YouTube channel, X, Facebook, etc. So that's the easy way. You could just click that, anyone, and you can find all of our videos, which has updates for all our projects, but also that series that Jigga had mentioned called Forensic Pixology, where two longtime veteran pro pixel artists who grew up with the classic 8-bit and 16-bit consoles and worked in the industry professionally, we look at, play, and analyze the pixel art and of classic games on classic systems, and really get nerdy into the technical constraints the artists were working within, and then possibly some of the reasons they made decisions they did for things like use of color and the way certain frames or animations look, all that kind of fun stuff. So,
yeah,
or fun for us geeks anyway.
yeah yeah, like super fun for two people having a conversation and about 12 people viewing on YouTube probably, but those 14 people altogether really do enjoy it. So, you know, I think it's
Yeah.
all I can say is, right back at you with the clear, evident passion on display in having these conversations. And I found it really compelling, not only because I'm a lifelong pixel art enthusiast myself. I've not
Yep.
really had the same professional background as you with that kind of stuff. I've technically done a tiny little bit of paid pixel art work, but mostly it's been something I dabbled with in my youth. And
Yep.
then I've been on a very, well, I was going to say weird journey. I think most people who are in or around game development have, a few people have a very straight and unweird journey, I think. So maybe that's not, unusual, but yeah, I've been involved in education. I've taught game art at a vocational school for game development for a number of years.
Nice.
And I've been involved in I have been involved in game development. I worked at Ubisoft in Bulgaria for about a year.
Cool.
In a previous life. Yeah, so I by trade, I'm a 3D artist and I guess 2D artist as well. I've done pixel art and illustration and animation and you name it, I've dabbled in it at least. But I'm also very passionate about game design, and there's like, I know that I'm not a programmer, and it's not something I wish to do unless I really, really have to. But beyond that, there's very few parts of making games that I'm not interested in like poking around at the very least.
Right.
But when it comes to pixel art specifically, it is something that I'm actually like I'm trying to move more into doing that more currently in a few different ways. Nothing to announce too officially or formally at this point.
Yep.
But hopefully more of that in my not too distant future, which I'm quite excited for. But it's very cool to see not just these like homebrew projects for old consoles and stuff, which the Mega Drive scene is very, very prolific currently.
Yep.
I know that there's a lot happening on both the Amiga and Neo Geo front, which I'm less in tune with than you, so we can maybe talk a bit about that in a moment as well. But
Yeah, absolutely.
that kind of stuff I think is really cool. But when it comes to pixel art in general, especially for the last, I would say, a handful of years or so, I've been kind of feeling this this desire to just really kind of get back to doing that. Like, it was something I did as kind of a hobby when I was younger. I dabbled in fighting games being a huge part of my life and one of my favorite genres. I messed around a bit with Mugen back in the day. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Yeah, I sure am. Yep.
But yeah, it was it never amounted to anything super serious. But I did some mostly art focused stuff, and I tried to learn a bit of scripting. But it never really amounted to anything too concrete. But I did spend a lot of my like high school years very, very closely studying pixel art and animation from like Capcom and SNK and other fighting games and stuff. And I think that's a lot of the foundation of my not just my pixel art, frankly, but my kind of art knowledge. It was a very healthy diet of very high quality artwork from kind of the golden age of 2D games that I was just really, really devouring at that time. And in more recent years, I've just had this itch to kind of return to doing more of that stuff. And in doing so, I've been looking for videos or discussions or just like anything, any kind of discourse around pixel art as as a medium or as a
right art
craft.
form.
Yeah. And what I found is that there it really isn't a lot of it. I'm sure there might be pockets of discussion on the internet. Like I used to be not active exactly, but I was on Pixelation and Pixel Joint and some of these other like pixel art focused websites.
As was I. We may have crossed paths without knowing each other decades ago.
not impossible. Not impossible.
Those forums. Yeah.
I've I've had that happen with people I've gotten to know on Twitch, like where it's either we learn at a weirdly late in the process or even just right away that like, oh yeah, hey, I think we met on this forum 20 years ago or something. So we very well may have. But as forums kind of fade away and like just being part of those kinds of communities, like I said, I'm sure some of it still exists, but it sort of faded out of my life anyway. So now I tend to look more on YouTube for this kind of stuff. And I consume a lot of video essays and all kinds of longer form video stuff on YouTube. And I found your videos very interesting because it's very rare to find, at least I haven't found much, discussing pixel art on both a technical and artistic level with that kind of fine-tooth comb and just kind of discussing it in detail. When it comes to like a lot of the sort of pixel art stuff that you find on YouTube, I feel like it's kind of one of two categories. One is just like devlog stuff from people making games and maybe showing a bit of their process, or it's, if anything is of kind of more of an educational nature, it tends to be very beginner focused.
Right.
So I've seen a lot of like interesting looking tutorials on pixel art, but I can't say that I've found a lot of tutorials where I personally learned much from them. Because I feel like, I've done a bunch of pixel art. I'm an experienced artist, but because I'm like self-taught and because I haven't really, I feel like, there were a lot of discussions on pixelation in places like that, 10, 15, 20 years ago, where there were a lot of, academic discussion, let's call it, of like pixel art technique.
Right.
And I feel like, well, I haven't engaged with that kind of stuff since then. So surely there's going to be stuff that I've missed. So let me try to catch up. And then, you try to find information or you find videos and people talk about teaching and learning. And it's like, well, here's what anti-aliasing is, or here's a bouncing ball, and it's pretty basic stuff. But I found that your guys' discussion about, the specifics of the execution of pixel art in individual games, talking about technical limitations of specific platforms, like you said, breaking down, the technical background to what may have informed certain artistic decisions in games. I found that like extremely compelling, and it's the kind of stuff that I really wish there was more of. So
awesome. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the next episode. After however many years.
We definitely plan on getting back to it as soon as we're a little spread thin. And you had mentioned how we have several projects going. The reason we're able to do that is, like you said, Corey and I are the two core members of BitBeamCannon, but my brother has come in full time to handle the programming side of Metal Mac, which is Corey's new project. Which, like you said, there's the Kickstarter for that too. There should be a page dedicated to Metal Mac on the website as well, at BitBeamCannon. And then, so basically, Corey wrapped up 99% of the tasks he needed to do for Damon Claw. So he was able to migrate over and be the like showrunner, basically the producer, director, and artist for Metal Mac. And similarly, now we're at a point where we're wrapping up Damon Claw for Neo Geo to such an extent that the most of the really time-consuming stuff will soon be over for me too. Now it's mostly just a lot of gameplay and reporting bugs or things that could be fixed to improve the gameplay before we start mass producing and shipping the Neo Geo version. So that's soon on the horizon. So basically, by the time the funding from the Metro Siege Kickstarter comes in, I'll be able to start dedicating a large amount of hours per day and week on Metro Siege. And then the remaining version of Damon Claw, the PC version, that's already in a decent enough state that that's going to be more of a slow, continual improvement, because the great thing on Steam, you can just update as many times as you want, whenever you want, and just like, hey guys, we updated these graphics, we fixed these bugs, we added this feature. So I plan to keep improving and working on and adding features to the Neo Geo version of Damon Claw on a more slow burn, like a lot of little updates over time that don't require an enormous amount of full-time focus.
Right.
And again, my brother, who's a real programmer, he's going to be taking over most of the duties for adding in those new features to the PC version of Damon Claw. So anyway, and we do have a lot of other team members for Metro Siege. An amazing programmer, Alex Brown, which is the only reason why we were able. All the footage you're seeing there on the webpage is the Amiga version, and to get that many characters of that size with that many moves, with usually somewhere around 60 colors on screen on a classic OCS Amiga, is virtually an impossibility
Yeah.
without an incredible programmer working really, really diligently with a rare pixel artist these days who not only knows all of the weird constraints and hardware banging tricks to create the illusion that those constraints don't exist. And the amount of shenanigans, the amount of tricks we go through. Metro Siege thinks it's a 16 color game. And
Okay.
so it's
Could've fooled
a
me.
huge right. Well, that's the thing, that you end up with roughly 60 colors on screen, but it's not straightforward like any other console like the Mega Drive, where you're given 2 layers of scrolling that you could parallax slice the heck out of, all built-in features, all easy peasy. With the Amiga, the custom chipset is flexible, but there's a million different ways you could approach it. So literally, I was working with Alex Brown, the programmer, on every level to figure out the optimal way to break up the screen with all of these different tricks, to figure out exactly where we can put parallax, what colors can go where. So every level is super custom programmed. The biggest example is right there, well, there's a 3-second delay, but the subway train.
Right. Yeah.
So we had to literally create a completely abstracted scrolling and camera layer in the logic, because in 99.9% of 2D games, the tile map of the level, its scrolling is what you call the camera, right? Everything makes sense, very straightforward logic. But the only way, and this is the weird thing, I'm such a nerd when it comes to the technical stuff. Like, I, as an artist, I could imagine this in my head, and I could explain it in a way that the programmer actually knows what I'm talking about. So like in the industry, I was the weird artist that was the go-between who could communicate between the programmers and the artists to develop in-house tools and things like that. So without that kind of nerdiness on both sides and an amazing programmer willing to bend over backwards and spend all kinds of extra man hours per level to customize it, it's just not possible. But anyway, the point is, the train itself, that's the level. So the characters are staying in place. The level is whipping by as the train, and there's a virtual camera. What you see as the environment, that is like a handful of horizontal bars of color and some sprites scattered around to make it look like an environment.
Interesting.
And the actual environment is the train that whips by in the background. So like that would have been so easy to do on the Mega Drive with the built-in features. And it's literally like 10 times more work. And the other thing that's crazy, to get the more colors on the screen, we have to use the coprocessor that we call the copper chip. And so what you're doing is, per scan line, you could run this little tiny code very quickly, obviously, because it's like every time the cursor is done drawing one row of pixels, in that tiny fraction of a millisecond that it is moving over to start drawing the next row, you can run code with the coprocessor. And that's where you say, okay, this color index that's currently displaying this RGB value, change it to this RGB value.
Right.
So when you're like a nut job like us working on an Amiga game, trying to make it look comparable to a Mega Drive or a Super Nintendo or Neo Geo game, the artist has to do their pixel art, not actually seeing how the art's going to look, and then going, okay, I have to jump through these hoops to simulate what the colors will look like, and then give that information in a whole different way to the programmer. Anyway, I could go on forever, but anyway, it's
Yeah.
it's not Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, the dangerous thing is here is that I might even let you, but you know, in the interest of eventually getting to looking more at the game, let's
Yeah,
try to
absolutely.
detour a little bit. No, but I find this super fascinating too, and I can relate to what you're saying with the kind of being the sort of liaison between art and code. I don't do any programming, but I'm also, I would say, somewhat technically minded. At least,
Right.
I find it like unsatisfying to not know how things work technically. Like I just want to have a deeper understanding of it to make sure that I, you know, just have a complete picture. And that's led me to being in kind of similar situations sometimes, you know, in my work. But yeah, you know, you you touch on, you know, just the general topic of the limitations of working with the Amiga, more specifically in this case, which brings me to another question, you know, that's the kind of obvious question in a way, but you know, there might be different angles to it. And you know, just broadly, why on earth Amiga?
You would have to be crazy from a strategic and business standpoint. You would have to be a lunatic to put in all this work to make an Amiga game. You have to have grown up an Amigan, which is the case. So what happened, and I'll try to make this as short as possible, the programmer and the amazing musician who did all the 99.9% of the sound effects and all of the great music for Metro Siege, they had just finished, and he's also a pixel artist. He did all the pixel art. He did some pixel art for Metro Siege, but he did all of the pixel art for their previous Amiga game called Worthy. And the way things always were back in the day, even back when they were developing Worthy, was if you were going to make an Amiga game, it had to be a hobby side project on top of your day job, on top of your family responsibilities. And there was no chance in hell you were ever going to make enough money to even pay for like the equivalent of a grain of rice to live off of per day that you're working on the game. Right. So that's just the reality of it. But I'm a crazy Amigan. I grew up one of rare. It was not a well-known system in America even back when I was a kid.
I mean that's part of why I found it sort of fascinating, because BitBeamCannon is not like German or British yet.
Exactly. Exactly. So what happened was my brother and I, we were a rare breed of American that had an Amiga and a Sega Master System, by the way, when we were young.
Yeah, that's like
and I was actually frustrated with both systems, that the hardware was capable of so much more, but because of the kind of business situation and marketing and things like that, both systems had a insultingly bad game library.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there are some gems in the Amiga game library, especially on the more computer side of things, Lemmings, SimCity, Populous, things like that. There's one called Settlers by Blue Byte, which is a German company, which is fantastic, incredibly charming. But the point is, when it comes to more arcade style games, the original ones usually were like frustratingly mediocre, especially in gameplay design. But the other problem is, even when an Amiga publishing or development company got the rights from the giants like Capcom to make a port of a AAA game like literally Final Fight for the Amiga, they hired a guy like who may have still been in college.
Right. Yeah.
A super young guy with almost no experience. They gave him something like a half a year, 6 months, a tiny budget, no artist.
Sounds generous. I mean, it's not relative to what you would need, but relative to what the standard would be.
Yeah, it was. And then to make matters even worse, there was another computer back then called the Atari ST, which shared the same main processor, the infamous Motorola 68,000, which is shared among Mega Drive, Neo Geo, Amiga, and the other thing I just mentioned, the Atari ST. So these software developers, they would usually often get the rights to make the Atari ST port of Final Fight and the Amiga version of Final Fight, for example. So the Atari ST, it had drastically inferior sound. Like it had built-in MIDI support, which was cool if you wanted to make music, but for just having a video game with good sound effects and music, it was drastically inferior to the Amiga. And then graphically, it was far worse. Like it could display basically a max of 16 colors, had no sprites to speak of. I think it had one sprite, which was for the mouse pointer. And like none of the custom hardware to do really cool hardware banging. So what they would do, these companies, it's like, here you go, you've got 6 months, a tiny budget. I want you to simultaneously, because it's the same main processor, just make the game so it'll run on both systems. So a huge chunk of the Amiga library got dragged down to the lowest common denominator of the Atari ST's graphical abilities. So like everything was going against the Amiga. It didn't have a big enough market share because it never made it in America. So the potential funding was tiny compared to Sega or Nintendo. And then their attitude, and this was very true in the West with computer owners and computer games, like even to this day, a lot of Amigans, you'd have to clutch their joystick, their grandpa one-button joystick out of their cold dead hand. Like for the longest time on the Amiga, it was you had to design your game to support one button. So all of these things, as an American with an Amiga, it was driving me nuts. My entire teenage and young adult life, I was like, the Amiga could do so much more. And it just so happens these guys that finished Worthy, they saw me do a mock-up. I did a repaint literally over a screenshot from the abysmally insulting Final Fight port to Amiga. And I said, this is how it could have looked if they leveraged the Amiga's abilities. They saw that and some other mock-ups of other potential games, and they contacted me. Thanks, John Takiris, the musician of Metro Siege. He's the guy that said, hey, Alex, we should get in touch with this guy. And they, sure enough, they did. And they said, if any of your mock-ups, if we could work together to turn it into a full-blown game, which one would you like to do most? And that's when the whole conversation started. And I said, I would love to make what became Metro Siege, just a beat 'em up back then. I'd love to make this beat 'em up into a real game, but there's conditions. The only way we could do the game justice is if we used modular animating, making the animations out of tiny body parts, because otherwise there's no way we're going to fit all the moves in. And I happened a decade before that, I had made a prototype on top of my day job, nights and weekends. I made a prototype for a modular animation program that later became Spriter. Like I found a much better programmer who reprogrammed it. We did a Kickstarter. That became Spriter. And so, but in the meantime, I still had this super primitive prototype that was better than Spriter for this circumstance, because it had to be super crude, very primitive, very basic features. This body part at this XY coordinate. And my old crusty prototype, which luckily I still had on my hard drive, was the perfect way to create an example. So I gave Alex Brown I whipped up a really quick modular animated idle animation. I sent it to him. The next day, he had it running on a real Amiga, and I said, this is going to work. Like, these guys mean business. This programmer is amazing. And so, but the point is, going back to your question, is that the other, what was it? What's the word? The other factor, the other thing that I kind of demanded on top of the modular animation was, we can't just think of it. We're going to be investing a huge amount of time to make this game. We need to think of it not just as an Amiga game. I don't want this to be a good beat 'em up for the Amiga. We need to think of this as this game. We're going to do everything we can to eventually get it on Steam, itch.io, Switch. So we need to make a great game, period, regardless of the platform. And we need to think of it that way and not just think, oh, this is a side project, a labor of love. So we'll cut corners good enough for a labor of love. We need to like really, and luckily those guys, as you can see by the results of just this demo,
Right.
which still has a lot of room for the improvements we have planned. It's anyway. So the point is, the only reason this is remotely financially feasible is, again, the amazing programmer. He kept making his authoring system, the code base, the tool suite, the workflow for making Metro Siege. He's made it so incredible now. It like you can cross develop simultaneously for multiple platforms, including modern systems, but also now for Neo Geo. And the overwhelming majority of the funding for the Kickstarter, thank goodness, are coming from the Neo Geo backers, who they're a rare breed that all the stars have to align for them to be willing to shell out hundreds of dollars to help fund the creation of a new game, especially in the wake, the shockwave of the release of the pre-orders of the AES Plus. We were really worried. We postponed the launch of the Metro Siege Kickstarter by nearly 2 months because literally we were wrapping up getting ready to launch, figuring out what we were going to offer and the price points and stuff. And suddenly, here's the AES Plus for a few $100, and you can get all of these quadruple A amazing games made by giant teams of 17 or more people working overtime for years. Like, you can get each of these just incredible quality games like Goro Mark of the Wolves. You can get it for $90. So that obviously was like, oh crap. Are there going to be enough Neo Geo backers out there who understand the difference between a re-release of a game that has made profit a bajillion times over the decades that it's been available across so many platforms, right? Like they made their money back and more back when the Neo Geo was in business and they were selling to the the arcade people and the home AES owners.
The collector crowd.
But then since then, they've been on everything. They've been on Steam, virtual consoles. They've made back so much money. So that's how they can charge $90 for those amazing games, is because every bit of money is just the cherry on top. It's extra profit.
You would have to imagine,
I was
so you would have to imagine too that there's there's always the what's the expression, the economics of scale. That's the AES Plus is still like a niche product, but it's not niche compared to 3.5 guys making an Amiga game and porting it to Neo Geo. It's even that's a world of difference, I would imagine. But I think
absolutely,
the response to the AES Plus seems to have been very positive from what I've seen. With some luck, that can bring kind of a, I don't know how much of a new crowd, but technically, there's a potential for a bigger market than you would have had otherwise. I'm not sure if you have any sort of data on this specifically, but I know that you'd put up like this sort of roundtable discussion or whatever you might call it, a video a while back where I forget who was on it. If it was you, Corey, and Chris.
Chris, exactly right. Yep.
But I listened to that and I thought it was pretty interesting. I think we both kind of repeated the main points very quickly just now, but it's a cool thing. As someone who personally, I love a lot of Neo Geo games, but I never felt much of a desire to own an AES. I'm like, you know what? That's $250 or whatever. It's not, for what it is. It's a surprisingly good price.
Yeah.
And those boxes look great. Like, I could see myself, and especially I looked at it. I saw in the Japanese prices are even lower with the yen being super weak. I could see myself, getting a copy of whatever KOF 02 for $70 just for that beautiful purple pink box. But I digress. Anyway, long story short, a couple of lunatics and lucky circumstances is why Amiga. And because I was curious, like I'd mentioned, like the fact that you actually personally have this like background with the platform, you know, helps explain some of it. But even that's an
Yeah.
unusual circumstance.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. And for me, it was literally a chance to live out a lifelong dream since my mid-teens of proving what could be
yeah,
done on this platformer, but also more importantly, beat 'em ups are absolutely hands down my favorite genre. I grew up with Chris, my older brother, playing co-op games together, and we loved beat 'em ups. And like the pinnacle to me was Streets of Rage 2, and I think my brother agrees. But we played like every beat 'em up we could find over the decades. And Metro Siege is us, or especially me, picking and choosing what I thought were the best aspects. Like the blocking and countering feature of Metro Siege is actually heavily influenced by Knights of the Round by
hmm,
Capcom, which is funny because a lot of people who've played Knights of the Round didn't even know that was a feature.
yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah.
and I was gonna say it's kind of the defining feature of that game.
Exactly. Like that's what drove me nuts about Knights of the Round. It's a high quality game in general, but most people that play it, they just do the usual beat 'em up. You kind of go into what I call button mash hypnosis. Line
Mhm.
up, button mash, line
Right.
up, button mash, right? And the that feature was so cool and revolutionary at the time. And even back in the day when we first got it, Chris and I on the Super Nintendo, uh, I discovered the feature, or we discovered the feature, and I was like, they should have emphasized this more. Like when the game is demoing, there should have been like a joystick, there should have been text
Yeah,
that
yeah.
said, you can, if you time a block well this way, you can do like a super strong counter attack by doing this, right? Like they almost, that would have been a case where it would have been worth it to force a little tiny moment in level one where you're forced to learn how to
Right.
do
Yeah,
it. You
yeah,
know what
yeah.
I mean? Because, like I said, just I've seen so many people play through the whole game not even knowing that was a thing, and they might they might accidentally pull it off once. And I'm like, you did it! Like, did you realize what you just did? And I'm hoping they go, oh, what was that? Let me check the manual. But they inevitably don't. You know what I
Right.
mean? Which again is part of why I love watching you and Goaty, because you guys get into the real fine details of games, and
Yeah, and I
that's
mean,
really
beat 'em
awesome.
ups is
Yeah.
a something very near and dear to me as well. And like I'm I'm kind of biting my tongue here because I can sense that I would greatly enjoy just having an in-depth game design discussion with you over the
Yeah.
next several hours. Um,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Let's get into the game. Yeah. You're right.
but yeah, we could try
Yeah.
to maybe put a pin in some of this and come back to it. But and it's mostly it's
Yep.
not me like trying to rush things or being rude or anything. It's more about
No.
me being
No.
self
No. No.
conscious about the fact that I'm going to get stuck talking about things. Like I do that
Yep.
without
Yeah.
someone, a second person goading me on. Like I'll just rant on my own, but then I have you
Yep.
to talk to, and it's I feel like the problem
Yeah.
is multiplying. But
Yeah. Yeah,
I,
these remaining 97 viewers, thanks so much. You guys are clearly the true geeks that actually appreciate this kind of stuff. But yeah, shall we? Luckily, I found out that it does remember that number we set up for the game
okay,
ID for
cool,
network play. It does remember that, so we should just be able to choose connect when you're ready to go into the game,
excellent.
and I could just start explaining the moves, and we can discuss the game philosophy. And like you said, there's I watched your original playthrough, and you made such great points that I do want to also address. I'll remember some of them on my own, but feel free to bring up anything in the moment,
Sure.
including criticisms, because that's the biggest value. Every little thing you noticed that was questionable in your original playthrough, I was nodding along and saying, yes, exactly. Like that's something we haven't gotten to yet, but we plan
Cool.
on
Yeah.
addressing. So that's really cool. But anyway, yeah, let me
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Just
Sure. We'll
whatever
get to
you want to
that
do.
very, very
Yep.
briefly. I just wanted to again remind everyone that this is on Kickstarter right now. I'm showing the page up here. I've pledged my 13 euros for a digital copy. Alas, I am neither a Neo Geo
Awesome.
or Amiga collector or enthusiast, and I have more than
Yep.
enough crap in my apartment right now. Uh,
You mean
I
it's not green screen behind you? That's a real.
yeah, it's Yeah, I've got my my completely real non-green screen action figures littering pretty much every flat surface of
Awesome.
this apartment. I'm trying to think of if there's something I want to grab and show here without everything falling apart, but let's leave it at that. Uh,
Yep.
what I was going to say is I'm happily supporting this for the Steam version, which, as I understand it,
Awesome.
it's kind of the same setup as with Demon Claw, with
Yep.
the other versions essentially being included in it. So if you
Exactly.
just
You'll
want
be
to
able
play
to
the
play
game,
all three.
that's
Yep.
the cheap, easy point of entry for that.
Yep.
We don't have to go over this whole.
It's,
Sorry,
yeah.
what's that?
I was just going to say, and it's no compromise. If you only care about playing the game, it's the cheapest option, and you get to play all three versions. So, like, it's not like you're settling for something less as far as gameplay for that lower price.
Right.
If you're not worried about owning the physical stuff, like there are deluxe digital versions which get you all the swag like the physical versions do, just with no game cartridge, basically. But if you don't have the room for it or the money
Yeah.
for it or the interest, there's the purely digital for 13 euros or roughly 15 US dollars, and you'll be able to play all three versions once the game is done, or
Yeah.
once each version is done. Yep.
I'm saving some of my cash for the inevitable wink wink Mega Drive version a few years down the line.
Yep. We definitely, everyone on the team is very, very interested in doing that. And that's the game plan. So things would have to go less well than we expect by quite a bit for that to not eventually happen.
Cool.
So, yep. Yep.
That's great to hear.
I mean, that's another system we love. And we also love the Super Nintendo, but obviously we can only offer for so many platforms in a single Kickstarter. And right now, the bar to entry for developing for Super Nintendo is very frustratingly high.
Yeah.
Hopefully, over time, that will change.
I think you're showing a great deal of I think wisdom and common sense and just I don't know. I think you're approaching it correctly. I've definitely seen other Kickstarters where they, whether or not they deliver, I just think it's always like a little bit of a red flag when they offer like here's a Game Boy version and a Mega Drive version and a Super Nintendo version and a Neo Geo version and a GBA version. Like,
right.
Even if you can do all that, like I don't know, you can look at like Xeno Crisis. I backed that when it was first on Mega Drive, and that's been ported to like 8 different retro systems at this point.
Yep.
So, like, you can go that route, but promising everything at once, I think, kind of benefits no one.
Big mistake.
Yeah.
Big mistake.
So,
yep.
And even then, even if
it could literally doom you as a studio and make you never finish those games or never make another game ever again. I'm actually going to be on another YouTuber's channel in the relative near future discussing everything I've learned over the decades of what to do and what not to do to have a successful crowdfund campaign. And that's going to be one of the first things I say is be careful, be hyper realistic with the numbers and be willing and able to finish whatever you're kickstarting, even if and when you run out of money before the thing is done. And because, I mean, not only should you never do that to anyone who backs it, you've got to be completely committed to deliver someday at least. But you just have to be really careful and very realistic with the numbers. Which goes against the whole offering an Amiga version instead. I hope if there are any Amigans watching who end up watching, I hope you guys appreciate and understand the difference in backing. Like if we had done this campaign for Neo Geo and Mega Drive, the funding would be twice as high right now, which would make it way easier for us to focus full-time hours and finish the game. But we started on the Amiga. They've been waiting the longest and very patiently for close to a decade for the Amiga version to be finished. So there was no way we were going to leave them high and dry. So the Amiga version had to be front and center on the Kickstarter. But just in general, back to your original question, probably a half hour ago or more, we're being as logical as we can, despite the fact that we're offering an Amiga version instead of a Mega Drive version.
Yeah, and everything is relative, right? Just, within the
Exactly.
context of this whole crazy scheme, you might as well try to approach it sensibly.
We're the most sensible nut jobs that you'll find. We're doing our best to balance it all out and make it work, make it still work. But the good thing is that it's not lost money. So it is way more work, and we have less money to do it to finish the Amiga version. But once the Amiga and Neo Geo versions are done, we can always do another Kickstarter for the Mega Drive version.
Yeah, and that'll be more or less, I don't want to say free money, but the Mega Drive audience is very enthusiastic.
On
average.
Yes. It is getting more and more competitive, especially for Neo Geo, but that's going to be more and more true even for Mega Drive. There are more and more skilled, bigger players getting back into retro development. There's actually big IPs now hitting the old 16-bit consoles, which is really cool. Like, I'm sure you've seen the Terminator game, even like Cuphead on the 8-bit
I was going to bring that up. Like, how crazy is it?
So cool. So
a Master System game of all systems. I found that pretty shocking.
Again, they have to love it. They have to have grown up with the system. It doesn't make financial sense, but I love the fact that they're doing it. And I love the fact that certainly Cuphead funded their ability to make that less rational decision for the love of retro games and the system.
It's just funny to imagine, that Master System game being in that like Xbox sizzle reel or whatever at E3 like 12 years ago. Wouldn't quite have had the same impact, I don't think.
Yep. But this is slightly unrelated, but I backed the modern, what's that expression? Spiritual successor to Castlevania by one of the directors or producers of Castlevania. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I backed that game. And no shade at the developer, but I was very underwhelmed with the eventual full-on modern high-tech game. But the 8-bit Nintendo style games that they made as bonus, those were fantastic.
I'm just chuckling because I have my shrink-wrapped Kickstarter Deluxe Edition on my shelf. I haven't gotten around to touching it, but I did buy or maybe I got it for free. I don't even remember. But the first of those, like the 8-bit versions, I did play that on Steam, and I really enjoyed it. So there's something to that. Let's make a fourth or fifth attempt here at pivoting into playing the game, and we'll try to keep things on rails here. So
if you choose connect, it should just
right. So let's
first you're gonna play. You did click on the green text for the web version.
This right? It's this. I have it open since before. Let me just check. Right. I think the audio is gonna need a little tweaking. I'm just gonna
boosting
just the game audio is a bit loud, so I think viewers feel free to let me know if audio's out of whack. Let me see if my controller appears to be working. So, all right, because it's in. Do I connect you through the network option?
Yep. Yeah, but now you should just be able to choose connect. You won't have to do the ID. So network and then connect.
That seems to have worked.
There we go. Yep, sure did. So if you have a favorite character, pick them, and I'll be the other character.
I'll go Alex then, because he's got grappling.
Okay.
And
absolutely.
I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on beat 'em ups, but and this is not without exception, but generally speaking, doing sick wrestling moves is one of the most fun things pretty much in any video game. So whenever grappling is like a character specific or non-universal mechanic, or even non-existent at all in a beat 'em up, I'm always a little questioning of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think over time, once you get to play the full version of the game someday, I think you'll really appreciate the fact that we added more nuance to grappling, including, it's funny, the fact that Kim does not grapple actually adds nuance to grappling, because you get the idea that some characters, it makes way less sense. It makes way less sense for her to walk up to a 300-pound man and try grappling with him, as opposed to someone like Alex or the third unlockable character, who's going to be much more about the grappling. So
Look forward to that.
You'll have to settle for Alex for now, but he's very well rounded. He's got an enormous amount of moves.
There's a pretty rich move set, and you know, we talked a little bit about before. You mentioned you know, the general sort of low quality of arcade action games, and perhaps beat 'em up specifically on the Amiga. Like there's some ports that, I mean, I don't know, there aren't many original Amiga beat 'em ups, certainly not many of note. I know that there's like the Motorhead game, there's an Amiga version of Last Action Hero that I think is a beat 'em up.
It just totally locked up on my end.
It's frozen here too.
I've never seen that before.
Well, there we go. I'm helping you find bugs.
We might.
You just
I
died.
don't know if this is.
And now it continues.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll see it on my end in a second. I'm assuming this just means there was a catastrophic server.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah, so I'm gonna refresh, and we're both gonna have to pick connect again. I have a feeling it's because we both left the game idling for a million years, starting before. Yeah, the server probably said, "Screw you guys." You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's right. There's Skinny and Franco. No, wait, hang on. Franco is the original. Skinny and Franco is the new one, I think. Yeah, just like Amiga beat 'em ups. But point being, there are few, if any, that have like a lot of technical sophistication, and they've often been like very crude, barely functioning. And even the ones that are really good, like in my recollection anyway, the Amiga ports of Double Dragon and Double Dragon 2, or maybe it's only one or the other, I forget exactly, but I remember playing one of them and being really quite impressed. You know, they're still...
I've actually not played that one yet.
They're pretty simple.
All right, go into options and then
actually,
network.
before I do that, because it'll jump into the game, let me just double check. It's set to PAL video options. Does that make any difference?
Yeah, we should keep it. The game will run faster, but we have to keep it the same. I'm on PAL as well, so we should keep it. Otherwise, it can't synchronize if my game's running 20% faster than yours. So I'd leave all that stuff alone.
Sure. Just a question then, like, because and this is something that comes up for a lot of like people who develop for old systems nowadays. Like back in the day, there was no concern at all, really, for the most part, given to refresh rates between NTSC and PAL. So you'd have like British developed games released in America running way too fast, and like 90% of releases in PAL regions were too slow. But nowadays it's more common, and it happened on occasion back then, for games to like just have properly adjusted game logic to make it actually run at least roughly the same speed.
Right.
Is that or will that be the case for this game?
Yeah, so what's interesting is, going back to the Mega Drive, the overwhelming majority of games, like especially the great AAA games, were made in Japan. And it was just like, all right, we're designing it the speed we want, and everyone who's in a PAL region, you're going to grow up experiencing the game like almost 20% slower. And that's just the way it was. It's kind of, interestingly, kind of the opposite with the Amiga, where most game developers were in PAL regions. So that's why Metro Siege defaults to PAL. But we did make sure that, okay, hopefully it won't barf on us this time, but we did make sure that the game feels good in both. If, in other words, if you get good at the default PAL and you want a bigger challenge and you go up to NTSC mode, it's faster, almost like playing Street Fighter Turbo versus Street Fighter, but it's not faster in a way that feels at all broken. It's in a way that you're like, oh, I kind of like this now that I'm really good and can make fast decisions and know all the moves. Like the speed increase of switching it to NTSC is almost like another gameplay feature, instead of, oh, it's a shame, like if you get it in this mode. And even most Amiga fans, the majority of them are probably going to end up playing through some kind of FPG or emulator, so they can pick whichever frame rate or speed that they want these days.
I would imagine most like current day Amiga enthusiasts, like they're not probably limiting themselves to like NTSC. Like it's kind of like if you play the Saturn and only play PAL games or whatever, like you're gonna want to, you know, play the Japanese games, and you probably wanted an NTSC.
Exactly.
I assume that's you know, kind of the reality of the platform.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure I recall that even back in the day, some Amigas you could literally switch from NTSC to PAL mode. Like even back in the day. So I don't remember which Amiga models. If my even bigger nerd of a brother Chris is watching, he'll remember. He still owns several real Amigas.
Yeah, it would surprise me if that's a thing, at least.
But yeah, so I should start talking about the gameplay a little bit. So, and there was a comment that I really appreciate. Thank you very much. There have been a few more comments, so I can't scroll up. But someone had said that it was actually a cool story, which I think was about the birth of Metro Siege, how it evolved from a paint over. So I really appreciate that. Thanks everyone who's here for the full deep dive of nerdiness.
Yeah, I'm getting also like enraptured in our conversation. I was like, oh right, I'm streaming. There's people here. I kind of forget.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, so the big philosophy gameplay wise, because like I said, and it's a BitBeamCannon philosophy. We never ever decide we're going to make a game simply because we had fun with that genre when we were young, or it looks like that kind of game is doing well in the market right now. We really, really obsessively love the art form of game design. So for any kind of game we decide to make and dedicate into a full project, we're going to kind of put our stink on it. We're trying to, like, what would our idea have been back then of the ultimate version of that kind of game? So Damon Claw was my ultimate version, and of course Corey and Chris over time really influenced how the game evolved into the final thing. But the core driving motivation was, I grew up with a Sega Master System playing this hyper-generic game, Black Belt, which was actually the localized version of Fist of the North Star game for the Sega Master System. And there was something to that game. Feel free to get, do you remember? You hold attack and tap down, someone did ask on the Amiga version how many buttons are supported. 2 minimum are required. That's one of the other things I said to the team. We must not compromise gameplay and work extra hard to support one button gameplay. If a hardcore Amigan wants to play Metro Siege, they can play on the keyboard, or they can get one of the many available multi-button joysticks or gamepads now. Like we cannot compromise the gameplay.
1986 is one thing, but in 2026, anyone who has the means of purchasing and playing an Amiga game can probably source some kind of multi-button controller. That seems like a reasonable assumption to me.
Right. Or emulate on your system where you have like Xbox controllers or
work one way or the other. So
it's all about, like I said, Metro Siege is not designed to be, that's really good for an Amiga game. I want people that grew up playing and loving Streets of Rage 2 to actually go, you know what? I want to play Metro Siege today instead of Metro Siege 2. That's a tall order, you know what I mean? And so, like, our philosophy was, like I said, I want to take, and going back to Damon Claw, this is that Black Belt game as a genre. It was a genre back then for a split second. Black Belt was like at the time, the most fun fast action version of that pure side-scrolling. It's not a Metroidvania. It's not a platformer. It's not a run and gun. It's not really a beat 'em up. It's just a side-scrolling fast action game, almost rhythm action. That's what I loved about Black Belt, is there's always enemies coming from in front, behind, and above on both sides, and you're always thinking ahead, like, okay, I've got to attack this enemy and then turn around and do this or that. And like that, I realized that could have been a great genre all to its own, but every game ended up branching. It was like, no, you have to be a platformer or you have to be a Metroidvania eventually, you know? And so,
I mean, even these kinds of beat 'em ups is kind of like, because you can obviously see there's like a very direct line from like Spartan X, Kung Fu Master, to the Fist of North Star game, and like Vigilante and the Ninja Warriors, those kinds of like single playing games, to Double Dragon and Final Fight. And as much as I love Final Fight, and as much as I love Street Fighter 2, and as much as I love, you know, any number of these like paradigm shifting games, there is a certain sadness to like the kind of roads not traveled, you know, with game types that didn't really get to stick around or didn't, you know, stay very relevant or popular. Even though like there's a lot of games that people like made quite a few of, or in some cases just like the one, and then you know, it didn't really stick around. But there's rarely, I think, evidence of that being like, oh, the depth of these ideas have been fully explored.
Exactly.
You know, so there's always more to it. And I think like my personal philosophy in game design, like increasingly as I'm becoming older and more curmudgeonly, I don't know, or perhaps as my tastes are refined, I find that kind of, not strictly that less is more, but more so that like in terms of what I find interesting to explore isn't like doing the most, or like the biggest scope, the most fancy ideas or technology, but more so like what can you do within a limited scope? Like what can you do? I mean, for example, you know, something like the limited technology of old hardware platforms, like the limitations are simultaneously very strict and very firm and very specific, but at the same time there's like also this seemingly infinite room for like exploring where those boundaries actually are exactly. So I find that like super cool. But also, you know, just in general, when it comes to, you know, combat mechanics in games, as a beat 'em up enthusiast, something I find really, really frustrating with a lot of current beat 'em ups, there are many things, but one thing is that like I love Final Fight, I love The Punisher, I love a lot of those like Capcom arcade games. And although I can enjoy some games that have like far more kind of elaborate or fast-paced or, you know, crazier combat with more mechanics or whatever, I don't feel like the ceiling has been reached in terms of like what you can do with a game that has like the mechanics of Final Fight. It's incredible how much that game got right on essentially the first try, but I think many games are so nowadays, like, and I mean it was true back then too, but a lot of games in my mind don't like seem to understand the fundamentals of the genre, or like what's the appeal of these games. And the, you know, you get the impression that games are made by people who just don't really understand these types of games. They perhaps see them as very mindless and there's no depth and complexity to them, and they kind of design them for an audience that seems to have the same idea. And so that, like, that's one thing. But the other thing is also like there's this, and I think they overlap a little bit, but there's this perception I feel like you hear repeated a lot, where a game like Absalom comes out and it's a cool game and it's got this whole rogue structure and everything, and people sort of describe it as like, oh, here's a developer who finally figured out how to make a beat 'em up relevant in the 21st century, or like they fixed this old type of game by making it a different type of game. And I think there's a lot of people who are very eager to try to reinvent the wheel despite seemingly not knowing what a wheel looks like.
Exactly, yeah. It's like so much cool stuff could be done with the wheel. It's like once the wheel reached like basically like a hexagon, they were like, that's great, let's start exploring totally different shapes now. Let's start adding bells and whistles to the hexagon. And I'm like thinking we can keep chipping away and making this thing a lot smoother so the ride is less bumpy, basically. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, and it's the counter side to that, like what you're talking about. I call it the Christmas list style of game design, where it's like, I'm going to make the game awesome because I'm going to add this feature and add this feature and add this feature. And for every feature you add, that means you literally have less time to spend perfecting the core features. Yeah. So there can be very much a diminished return on the investment. A very simple game can be incredibly fun if the person designing it came up with a core concept and refined the hell out of it through a ton of playing and tweaking the movement speeds, the collision boxes, the animation speeds, what they look like. Whereas you could have the most brilliantly designed game on paper with amazing ideas, and if you didn't have time or the wherewithal to refine those ideas, you could make brilliant ideas feel terrible or just ruin the game because it wasn't polished enough. Of course. Like, we've discovered that in our game development. Sometimes you have an idea that's so cool on paper, but you have to be willing. And it's the same thing in movies. Like, I've watched so many like interviews with movie directors and writers where they're like, it hurt so bad to cut this scene from the movie, but the movie's better without this scene. And it can be the same thing with gameplay. You could have a great idea, but if it ends up detracting from the total experience of the game, it's you gotta remove it. And it's the same thing, like in the first place, before you get into the whole Christmas list mentality, really refine the core gameplay to what everything it could be, and make sure there's something there that's unique. And that, like, that's going back to Metro Siege. The big philosophies in my head were avoid button mash hypnosis, and I'm saying that even though I've played the game so many times, and you're doing really well too while listening to me ramble.
I was gonna say I'm focused more on the conversation than the game, but go on.
Yeah, exactly. But so you've played enough so that you can play largely with like on autopilot, like the subconscious part of your brain can kind of handle things. But that being said, the whole point was, if you give people a good enough balance of moves and you really add a mechanic, which I think is greatly missing in most even AAA beat-em-up games, the mechanic of risk versus reward should be pivotal. It should be a critical aspect of beat-em-up games. Literally, your life is supposed to be on the line, you know what I mean? And so that's where we get things why we added things like, if you don't mind, we could just wrap right around and then play again if you're up for it.
Absolutely.
So I could start demonstrating some of these things we're talking about. Oh, I think we have to reconnect in network and then connect.
Did you have a train of thought you wanted to finish before I interject?
So yeah, I was just saying, I'm going to start explaining all the gameplay things, but it's just the whole thing is risk versus a reward. Figure out ways to build that into the gameplay. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I feel like we have so much ground to cover here, and I'm greatly enjoying this conversation, and I'm like just trying to mentally juggle how to sort of comment on what we're seeing on screen and maybe explaining things to viewers. Because I have played this demo previously, so I kind of know how to play and everything, but we didn't really like explain what's happening beyond what's visible on screen, and I didn't really comment on anything that we're seeing either in terms of feedback or impressions. So why don't we go another lap here, and we'll
just talk about
we'll try to talk about what's actually happening.
Exactly, that sounds great.
No, that's fine. I was going to say I'll do Kim this time.
All right, well, I can demonstrate more stuff with Alex, so thank you for that.
It's perfect.
Okay.
So there's 2 characters now. There will be a third.
Yes.
And they're all like mechanically distinct.
We are getting close to the final announced stretch goal in the Kickstarter campaign, and if we get to that, there will be a 4th character added to all versions, and the 3rd playable character will be different amongst all 3 versions.
Right.
So that will encourage people who may have never heard of an Amiga and don't give a crap what an Amiga is. They might still say, you know what, I'm going to try the Amiga version now that I've played the Neo Geo version several times, because I want to see what this different 3rd playable character plays like. And it'll be the same with the PC version. But anyway, talking about the actual game, the best, most obvious example of risk versus reward is, I just tried it there and I paid for my risk. But so if you hold attack and hold back on the Amiga, you block. And if you block, he can't decide who to attack. Yeah. It's very funny. There you go. So a weak attack will block, even if you've been holding it a long time. A strong attack, as you saw, might hurt you a little bit and make you stumble back. A really strong attack is going to knock you on your ass and do full damage. So don't try to just do a lazy, not well-timed block against someone with a 2x4 or a baseball bat or a crowbar, right? So you can't abuse blocking, but even better, going back to Knights of the Round, once you're good enough where you could do a really well-timed block, you'll automatically, I just tried and failed.
Yeah.
I think...
We're playing online, so let's blame that.
Yeah, I think there's a tiny lag compared to not, since we are in 2 different countries, but I'll do it. I'll do it eventually.
Let's see, I'll give a shot if you have to jump at me.
It's very easy when there's absolutely smooth. There you go. So there we go. So that is a built-in reward for a super well-timed block. It becomes a counterattack. You can do that against almost every attack if it's really well-timed. Even someone with a baseball bat, you'll like basically parry it to the side, kind of sidestep it and do an attack. And so, one, obviously you might decide once you're really good with the game that you just want to do that to show off and play with style and really enjoy the game because you can take those risks. But more importantly, when you do successfully do that, you grow back a little bit of your health and your blue meter, which is like for your desperation moves, which is, you know, the classic press both buttons. So you have a dedicated meter for that. It doesn't take your health away. Yeah, some of your health to do your desperation.
More like his weapon moves to use that resource as well.
Exactly. So yeah, she, until very recently in the story, worked on the police force, and she basically paid extra to customize riot gear. That's what she's wearing. Mm-hmm. That's why she kind of looks like she's from some futuristic sci-fi game. But she has Tonfa that she's basically had an engineer build tasers into the ends of. And so instead of grabbing, like the same move that does a grab attempt in for Alex, will basically just do her stun move, and then she can chain that into other moves. And I think when you were playing the first time, you actually wondered and asked how that mechanic works. So if you just quickly do a tap forward with attack held, you'll do the stun move. But then if you button mash, as long as you have blue meter remaining, you're basically increasing the wattage.
Interesting.
You're prolonging the attack and increasing the damage.
I see. I'll give it a shot once I have some
noticed. Yeah, so you could, like, the faster you button mash, the more quickly you drain your blue meter, but you're also dealing heavier damage to the enemy. Oh. So that's her equivalent of grabbing.
Cool. I don't think I've ever seen the fat guy's grab before.
Yep. Mule is his name.
Right.
But yeah, and for that, you can, because a lot of people have game pads now instead of joysticks, you can button mash or press left and right, which is much more gratifying on an arcade stick, to escape, or a combination of the two. Right. So if you're on your game pad, you can slowly button mash and wiggle back and forward, or forward and left and right, I should say, and you'll get the same result as if you had an arcade stick and shook back and forth really quickly on the joystick.
Right. Yeah, feel free to grab the chicken.
Yep, thanks. Well, I see that. So sorry about that. I just threw someone into you. So that's another thing. I don't know if you ever noticed. This might be your first time playing 2-player.
It is, yeah.
But there's differences to the core physics compared to any other beat 'em up game. You actually can't hit a whole group of people with your jab, nor a kick, even a spinning kick. What's happening, especially with a jab, only your desperation moves can truly hit, and I think her stunner can electrify multiple people at a time. Because if you're touching a guy that's getting electrocuted, you could get some of that too. But the only way to hurt your co-op player is like I just did, like an idiot, throwing someone into them. I'm not, like, in real life, you're not gonna friendly fire jab your friend in the back when you're, it's very unlikely, you know what I mean? And so what happens, though, is when you hit one guy, he kind of like flinches or flails or stumbles back a bit, and that can bump anyone in really quick vicinity. So it's not damaging the other guy, but it's momentarily incapacitating that guy for a second long enough to keep them separated for you to do good crowd control gameplay.
That's interesting, because I definitely noticed like some instances of that kind of thing, but I don't think I'd really, like, it hadn't registered with me that you actually cannot hit multiple people, because it's very interesting, because that's one of those things where, like, there are games that work like that. Like, it was kind of like, that's one of the things, like Final Fight, one of the like 400 million sort of innovations that game brought was kind of that thing with a lot of interactions and how they work with hit stun and everything, and just piling enemies up and punching them. But some games insisted on not letting you hit more than one opponent with one attack. And like there are games like DD Crew. I don't know if you've played it, but it's a pretty obscure Sega arcade beat 'em up that is very goofy, and like most probably would say is not that great. But it's got some like weirdly satisfying mechanics to it, and that's one of those games where you can only hit one enemy with an attack. So if you try to play it like Final Fight, you'll have a terrible time, because the enemies will just hit you out of your attempts at fighting them. But it's like, that's a game I like, and I could conceivably recommend it, but not without like 4 or 5 caveats. And disclaimers.
Exactly.
But in terms of like looking at something like that, again, like going back to reinventing the wheel, like I'm inherently a little skeptical of anyone who's like trying to do something too original, when in my mind, so many games, when they try to do something new and fresh with beat 'em ups, I feel like would just have been so much better off just copying Streets of Rage or Final Fight or a quality game, and it would just feel much better. It is a
big risk. It was the same thing with Demon Claw from a different perspective. People see the screenshot of Demon Claw, and they expect, if not a full-on Metroidvania, they expect it better at least play like Castlevania 3. So it better have platforming and some degree of finding secrets and exploring. And it's not that at all. And like I literally early on when we released a demo and we're showing a lot of footage, we had at least one like vehemently really like repulsed viewer that was like, there's no level design, there's no level design, is what he said. And I understood what he meant. He meant literally, I was expecting some platforming. The levels look different and look pretty, but they have no influence on the gameplay. And that's actually true for most of Demon Claw. It changes up, there's a little bit of interaction with the environment, especially in what I call the dwarf section, level 5.
Yeah, the final stage.
With the spikes and the spike traps. Exactly, and that was very intentionally so. You know what I mean? Like really mix it up. Avoid that, which is the same thing we want to do in Metro Siege. Avoid that button mash hypnosis, where like keep the player engaged, like, oh, I can't do that now. Like that's a really important thing in beat 'em ups. You have to keep introducing new enemies with different behaviors that punish you for doing the same thing you've been doing thus far in the game. And
so I was kind of thinking about that, because that's another thing, like trying to bring conversation back somewhat to what's happening on screen. Another like pet peeve I have with many beat 'em ups, and this came up as recently as the other day. I was revisiting TMNT Shredder's Revenge,
Yep.
And that's a game that's great in many ways, frustratingly mediocre in others. But one thing that struck me that it's driven me crazy in many games, and I didn't remember it from having played Shredder's Revenge when it first came out. But that game just never really throws particularly big crowds of enemies at you, and even when it does, it's almost always enemies of the same type, or like the most crazy it gets is having like 3 different enemy types on screen, but usually it's 1 or 2.
Right.
And it's like, while you play Final Fight, it takes all of about 25 seconds before that game starts doing that. And you know, you play Turtles for 2.5 hours and you get like 1 instance of it. So like enemy design and encounter design and like how to, you know, combine different groups of enemies to create distinct encounters is something that it's very frustrating to me when I feel like that's like well, I shouldn't say the coolest thing about Final Fight, because there's an infinite amount of coolest things, but it's one of those things that they really figured out, and it's just like maddening watching people try to make the same kind of game damn near 40 years later, and they still don't get it.
How could you have forgotten what they so clearly proved decades ago? You know what I mean? Like, why are you doing worse instead of better, or at least as well?
Yeah, like if you're trying to do it different, why are you doing something that's so much like, you know, shallower and more uninteresting? So I had that kind of on my mind when I played this demo previously, because another thing that I think some games, like an approach that some beat 'em ups take, is having like basically different enemies per level. You know, sometimes it might be thematically connected. You know, the jungle enemies are in the jungle stage or whatever. And here there's like a little bit of that, because it seems like there's kind of different sets of enemies here. We don't necessarily get like huge combinations of every single enemy type.
But if you've noticed, there are different enemies in every environment. Like right now, it's not different enough in gameplay. Keep in mind, this Amiga demo, to get to this point, we were working very sporadically part-time over years, and it's 80% a tech demo and getting the engine established, and 20% gameplay as far as refinement, as far as making sure every enemy type really behaves differently enough and has moves and punishes you. Like, one of the things I'm going to do right away after the campaign ends, when I can start really working on the game again, is make sure at least one enemy type in level 1, and this is stolen with great respect directly from Streets of Rage 2. One of those thug types, if you try to jump kick him, he's got to uppercut your ass right out of the air and punish you for it. And so things like that are really critical. You could see these guys here, they can actually block. They can low block your low attacks and punish you for it. It's just not visible enough, because you could still beat them just by button mashing. Right?
I love that animation, by the way, of the newspapers.
Thank you. Yeah, like those little things. That's just something that Corey and I and my brother Chris wants. Someday he'll be the driving force to a game as well. You know what I mean? He's got fantastic design, gameplay ideas as well, and like plot ideas and stuff. So that'll happen eventually. But anyway, the whole point is we got through the demo again, and I didn't mention the other big risk versus reward system is the different ways you can hit enemies while they're down. So those are the two big ones: block and counter, and hit enemies while they're down. Hitting enemies while they're down, there's and another thing that this Metro Siege offers that most beat 'em ups don't is a dedicated low attack, which you can use many different ways. So, you know, in general, it's a leg sweep that can like knock someone down.
But why don't we just jump in right back into
and
it
show people? All right, let's go options and network again so we can connect. That would be an easy one to forget, that you have to reconnect each time. All right, do you want to be Alex again? Feel free to.
Pick whoever you want to show stuff with.
You be Alex this time.
We might have to go through this another 3 or 4 times before we
are
it's
satisfied. A pretty short demo, and we're both big time chatters. We love these topics so much. We could go on forever. But
I'll help you all here. So you have the button plus direction to do different types of moves. So the forward one with Alex is grabbing. Kim has the like the electro stick. So intuitively, you have the low attack on down.
Exactly, right. So there's a dedicated low attack you can do at any time, which helps you learn this enemy blocks high attacks really well, or this enemy will punish me if I drop kick. So it forces the player to stay more engaged, pay attention, and go, okay, I can't just line up and button mash. I have to realize what kind of enemy I'm facing and change my gameplay accordingly. And even within that change, there's so many moves, but that was another important thing. Like I said, Christmas list game design. I made sure every move is really different and serves a different purpose. They're not just moves that look different, but gameplay-wise, it's the same. So there's really no point other than a little visual variety. But so I can do the low attack to knock someone down, and then when I get near him, if I'm close enough and do the same thing, I don't duck down and sweep. I just kick them while I'm still standing.
Yeah, you do the vendetta
Even
kick.
better, I can chain my dash move into a low attack and do a sliding leg sweep that can actually knock over multiple enemies at a time. Like so. And then the final ways to hit enemies while they're down, if I knock someone down, jump up and tap down twice quickly, I can do a knee drop or even a flying knee drop across the screen out of a dash, but that comes with much greater risk because the enemy could get up or literally roll. Enemies later in the game, just like you can, I'm going to get myself knocked down on purpose. So I can, oops, I got up there. Okay, I got knocked back down. That was a bug. But you can see how I could roll to evade and I could stay down and get up when I want to. The enemies will be able to do that too. So you can bait some enemies later in the game. You'll be able to do this. You'll be able to stay on the ground. Like there's going to be these big guys that should have no business trying to do flying knee drops or elbow drops onto pavement. So you'll be able to bait them. If they knock you down, you'll be able to lay there and there's a good chance they'll try to do an elbow drop. You roll out of the way and they smash their, you know, their 400-pound frame and elbow or knees into the pavement and F themselves up pretty severely. And when you said attack and forward is to grab, that's absolutely correct. But to clarify an important point, that's a grab attempt. That's another huge difference in core gameplay. You don't just automatically grab someone when you rub into them. I wanted everything to be more intentional in Metro Siege. And what's interesting is you were talking about how more could have been done with less, and they just, you know, people trying whole new things, and often to the detriment or making the game worse. The whole concept of grabbing, there's so much that could be done with it, so much more nuance that could be added to it that can make things interesting. And there's some ideas I'm wrestling with. What do I want to expose? Because this game, it's been in development so long and we've been revealing ideas to patrons, and then some of those ideas end up in other beat 'em up games that are being made right now. So like, I don't want to reveal everything that's going to happen, but let's just say there's more richness that's going to come out of the fact that you attempt a grab. You don't just do a grab. And one of the simple things, it's the same thing with enemies. They have to try to grab you too. So you can see it coming for that split second, right? That doesn't exist in Final Fight. You could see it coming in that, okay, he's close to me, I might get grabbed. But there's no animation with a tell that he's going to try to grab me. And slowing things down that tiny amount and adding the visual cues, it's funny, slowing things down slightly by adding nuance makes the game more hectic feeling because your brain is constantly engaged more because you have to make more specific, very reactive decisions.
Right.
And so there will be times where you're going to be able to, certain bosses, and this is another aspect of risk versus reward. The reward does not have to be purely in gameplay, like you regain health points or you deal extra damage. Another big thing is we're going to be adding custom animation. So, like, let's say you're playing against a boss who's really grabby and loves grabbing you. If you figure out a cool, stylish way to counterattack, to lure him in to try to grab you, and to counter it somehow, there might be a custom animation that's really interesting or funny or cool that, like, really lets you know, I just beat the shit out of this guy. I really punished him for doing what he likes to do. You know what I mean? It's just so gratifying. And like there was a little bit of that we managed to sneak into Damon Claw with like the level 1 Birdman boss. When you get him in a counterattack with a flaming uppercut, he reels back, he grabs his face, and he's on fire for a second. You know what I mean? It's
I remember there's
the
two things
usual
like that.
blink hit animation, and we're gonna take that to a whole much higher level with Metro Siege.
That's very exciting because I think, of course, being very artistically minded myself, those little visual flourishes and sometimes not so little visual flourishes can be really, really cool and memorable. And it's interesting because I've always enjoyed beat 'em ups. I've always enjoyed game art and game design to different degrees, but I think in the last handful of years is when I've become like increasingly more kind of invested, I guess. Like I've been spending more time playing and analyzing and trying to sort of, if for no other reason than for my own kind of interests, like I've been enjoying gaining a deeper understanding of what it is that I like about things I like, and that kind of thing. Or if I'm playing games, one is awesome, one is mediocre. Why is that? What is the, like, can I quantify these things in more detail to better understand them, whether it's as a creator or player? And with beat 'em ups, like I find that there are so many of them. Like back in the day, the simple kind of wisdom was that arcade beat 'em ups were, on average, if not good, at least better than console beat 'em ups. There's a handful of exceptions, like the Streets of Rage games, which are essentially, they're not like 100% arcade design, but they're close enough, and they've got a lot of arcade sensibilities. They're obviously designed very closely to an arcade game.
Right, whereas, it would not seem out of place at all in an arcade, especially if it had a bit more color on screen.
The things really that make it not quite arcadey is like relatively, in the grand scheme of things, very minor things, like pacing and scoring and the amount of extra lives and the length of the game and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of console beat 'em ups that are like 2, 3, 4 hours long. They're quite tedious. They're poorly paced. And the thing that I've come to realize in more recent years, as I've been paying more close attention to these things and kind of been studying a lot of games and thinking a lot of my own ideas, is that like the thing, the kind of what's the word? Manifest isn't exactly the word for it, but the mantra, maybe we can call it, is that like a good beat 'em up has like a constant array of little beats of like things that happen.
Exactly.
And I felt like that's the real.
You've got to mix it up.
Yeah, like the real sort of dividing line between a beat 'em up that's good and one that isn't good, or at the very least one that's memorable and one that isn't, and those things are usually pretty synonymous, is that like if I mentally picture, let's say, stage 1 of Final Fight, I could describe to you what happens in that stage. I might not be able to like recount the exact enemy counts, but it's like I'm starting on the street, I walk half a screen, a door opens, enemies come out, a few bits later I'm at the subway station and the screen stops and I have to fight a few more enemies. There's an Elgato, there's a slash, I go down underground, the lights are out, the lights start flickering, Bilbo comes charging in, etc. Like there's all these things that like moment to moment if you're replaying it, you'll pretty quickly have a sense of, all right, this part's coming up, this part's coming up, this is going to happen. And some of it's purely narrative cutscene type stuff. Some of it's purely these enemy types show up on screen. But a lot of it, I think, in the best cases at least, is somewhere in the middle, where there's like visual presentation of things, or the way enemies are arranged, or there's, you know, this particular section is on a very narrow part of the stage, or there's pits here, or whatever it is. But it makes you kind of go, right, this is the part where ... Whereas,
exactly,
you know, Double Dragon 2 on the Commodore 64 or whatever, where it's like, well, here's the part where I fight a guy, then he falls over, then one other guy shows up and I fight him.
Right.
And like, I just described the whole game.
Yeah, exactly right. Going back to your point, mentioning the new Ninja Turtles 2D pixel art game, there's a big difference between production value and gameplay value. And that's a trap that can fall into. And I guarantee you the game has a lot of value, and a lot of talented people worked on it.
You see the money on screen for sure.
That's the frustration exactly that I've had too, is like, did you see the video of Corey and I playing that Rastan Saga 3 game?
I might have,
but on a little bit of a
for the benefit of our viewers, feel free to explain.
I went on a little bit of a rant. I know that's hard to believe. Early on, like level 1, so like you had the artists working on fishmen, undead warriors, like assassins, knights, like bad guys, like a million different types of bad guys, like 2 different kinds of fishmen, dragon men,
and they're all beautiful.
You get, it's a beautiful game. The problem is, and this is what I went on a rant about, they, to use a crude terminology, they blew their whole load in level 1. It's like, the game would have been so much better if they stuck to a theme per level, and it's like, this is the level where you're fighting against like an opposing army of knights. This is the level where you're fighting against undead, and you could have several variants, very, very creative variants of that theme. If you're scrolling through level 1 and it's like, okay, I'm fighting a knight. Oh, that's weird. Now a fishman is on the same side as the knight and is attacking only us for some reason. Oh, here comes a zombie. He's not attacking the fishman or the knight. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's like the whole visual creative load is just blown on the first level. And then it's like, for the next 4 levels, we're going to be seeing the same guys over again, maybe with a recolor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a balance to be struck there for sure. But yeah, go on if you had more to say.
Well, that's just my point, is you can... too much of different things going on is a cacophony. Yeah, right? Less can be more. And
you gotta be wary of the signal to noise ratio.
Exactly. And it's like I watched all 3 Matrix movies. I loved the first, right? Mm-hmm. And then the second one... It would have been a drastically better movie that way more people would have liked if they literally chopped out between 30 and 40 minutes of the movie. Like, there was so much redundant, repetitive action scenes. Morpheus almost fell off of the top of the truck on the highway chase like 4 times. It was ridiculous. Like, how many times does he have to, like, do we care the third, the 4th time? You know what I mean?
Right.
That kind of thing. So it's like what you were saying, you have to keep mixing things up. You have to introduce new things, and a game can overstay. Like, that's it's very frustrating to me that even most of the AAA games, especially Streets of Rage 3, that game in my opinion would be better if it were like 20 minutes shorter.
Probably.
It becomes a slog. Like, you're doing the same thing, you're fighting mostly the same enemies.
I like that game, but I don't disagree. Yeah, I mean, I think it's... Yeah. I've said this is another one of my kind of philosophies on games, that, like, the simple way I like to put it is that there are almost no games I can think of that I played through to the end, I finished it, and then I was, like, sad or upset that there was not... that, you know, that I could no longer enjoy the game. But the number of games that I, for whatever reason, started playing but didn't see through to the end is, like, literally countless. So I would
Most
much
people's
rather
Steam library.
Yeah,
Most Steam libraries is like that. Yeah.
I'll much rather err on the side of a game being short. And it's like, if the game, if it's a narrative game, if it ends where the story should end, it's satisfying, it's fine, I'm happy to move on. And if it's if it's a game that's more the kind of game where you play it and you enjoy the act of playing it, there's nothing to say you have to stop because you saw the end credits. You can just play it again.
Exactly.
You can have fun with it, which is a concept that seems alien to a lot of current players.
I completely agree, and that was one of the other giant frustrations, and that's another risk we take at BitBeamCannon. The biggest criticism that Damon Claw gets is it's short, and that's by design. We made sure it scratched a visceral itch. You felt like you went through a pretty epic journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
it didn't get boring.
Right.
And the thing is, there's the other difficulty settings. There's the totally different gameplay style with the second playable character.
Right.
And then there's 3 versions of the game, which will each have a super different gameplay second playable character. So that's the value. But it's a huge risk when you're offering a new game. Everyone fell into the same track. Everyone got tricked. It became this marketing nightmare where everyone equates how many hours it takes to beat a game with the value of the game.
Yeah.
Even if you're spending 90% of that time in the forest killing wild animals to build experience points and get potions or gold coins that fall out of weird forest creatures,
you're
that's considered more value. And it's no, again, that it's the opposite of the Christmas list. That's the Christmas list thing. Whereas we're going to replay the game like crazy. The time we could have spent making 4 more levels that are all very, very similar, 4 more boss fights that are reskins, instead of doing that, we're going to replay the game and make sure it's fun and make sure we hit you with little surprises.
Yeah, and, I think there's just, and I believe me, I don't know how much or how frequently you've seen my streams, but this is like a recurring subject here. Someone says something in chat and it sets me off, and then I go on a 90-minute rant on pretty much this exact topic. So it's well-worn territory, but I do completely agree, and I think it's extremely refreshing to hear, a developer expressing those same frustrations, because I think even in you would hope that in the space that you operate in, and I dabble mostly as a consumer, but hopefully more as a developer moving forward. But in this space of developing new games for old systems, obviously the target audience is not going to be people who are totally alien to 80s and 90s game design, but even among games made by and for these people, presumably this kind of hour per dollar value brainworm just seems to seep in somehow. And I'm very glad that Damon Claw I thought was very well paced, very exciting, very fun beginning to end. And if that game had been an hour longer, I would not have thought it was better.
Right, especially if that extra hour was a repetition and a reskin of what you already played. And I really appreciate that. Who do you want to be this time? If you want to play through again.
Sure, okay. I do, because I keep thinking in the back of my head that there's a bunch of little things that I want to comment on. One point that you had made in the past is it's a little weird. The levels, the environments are just called level 1, level 2. And that's one of the times I was exactly right. This is a demo. That was just, we're getting the functionality working. Those are going to be titles of subsections. It might say the back alley or the industrial district or the subways, that kind of thing. It won't say level 1, level 2, level 3. And there are quite a large array. You're going to see a lot of the city, a lot of different parts of the city. Yeah, I have some
your adventure. Yeah, absolutely.
And thoughts about that too, because You know, I was touching on it previously with like the enemy variety and stuff, and I'm very happy to hear. Like, I think, like, in a lot of ways, I think you're saying a lot of the right things, and you know, I enjoyed Democlaw a lot. I certainly have faith and trust in you guys as developers, but at the end of the day, the proof's in the pudding, right? So you know, we'll see how it turns out. I was gonna say, I'm sure you don't find it insulting or offensive for me to say that, because I'm sure you felt the same way about many promising looking games.
It's actually off-putting when there's like a YouTuber or someone that wants to be supportive and they've got like no constructive feedback at all. Everything's just like, that's so awesome, I can't wait. You know what I mean? Like, I like it. I'm a little more comfortable.
And I'm sure
into the
like
weeds and
just from what I've seen in a lot of the kind of YouTuber space around these kinds of things, like I get it. Like I want to be an enthusiastic supporter too, but I don't have it in me to let that overshadow my. It's not even really like concern about making sure games are good, but just like my passion for game design. Like I can't not look at things with a critical eye because I want to be supportive. But like, you know,
it's the same way with me in video games, me with movies. I've watched so many videos and tutorials about storytelling and things like that I can't watch a movie and turn that off. I'm always thinking, why did they do this? Maybe I would have done it differently. I wonder where they're going with this. I wonder if their choice here is going to pay off, or if it's just like a kind of random choice they made. That kind of thing, I completely understand.
So I would say, like, in light of that, like, it was definitely a thought I had when I first played this, and, you know, it hasn't really changed now. It's the same build and everything, but, like, with the enemy variety and the enemies, like, I think, as you say, and I think that makes perfect sense in terms of what has been developed so far and what hasn't. Even being you know, a lower frame rate game, which is something I usually, you know, I'm a little bit of a stickler for, like, it manages to still feel good. I'm sure it'll feel even better at 60 FPS on Neo Geo, but you know, it's it doesn't feel when you're playing the game like it's being held back by it. So like
I appreciate that. The
feeling of pressing buttons, and even the fact that you're using these directional inputs, you know, going back to Knights of the Round, I think that game's really cool. I like a lot of the mechanics in it. I think the scoring in that game is quite interesting with the chaining multiple enemies of the same type and etc. But I find it a quite frustrating game to play because there are so many overlapping inputs, and it's very easy to do the wrong thing by mistake.
Accidentally,
So
speaking of that, oh sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I'm quite impressed with, you know, I'm not saying that doesn't ever happen in this game, but it feels like even in this state, care has been taken to try to avoid that, or you know, there's an awareness that that's a potential issue.
And keep in mind, the Amiga version supports 2 buttons minimal. It might end up supporting a 3rd button. By default, the Neo Geo will support as many buttons as we decide through a ton of testing and letting other people test what's the best kind of spread of the inputs.
And
the,
you know, with Neo Geo,
button for grabbing is dedicated on the Neo Geo and the modern system. It's not hold attack, and the great thing about that is, so if you want to do a really well-timed block on the Neo Geo or modern version, you just tap the block button and you block. You don't do a jab first and hold, you know what I mean? It makes
hopefully
it much more fluid.
Well. You know,
so,
it's even that I feel like is a balancing act, right? Because especially defensive mechanics being overpowered can be a real problem. But I was going to say a little jokingly that, you know, the blessing of working with Neo Geo is that you also have a maximum of 4 buttons, right? So you don't end up in the curse of a lot of modern beat 'em ups and other games looking at an Xbox controller and seemingly going, well, all right, what do we do with all these buttons? Better assign something to this one over here. And all of a sudden you have a game
feeling that you're obligated. Exactly. That reminds me of the thing you were saying about it frustrates you how so many people seem to have completely bought into the idea that the only or the biggest value of a game is the length it takes to beat the game. And you said there should be plenty of people that grew up in the 80s that know better, but I'm telling you, those people that do know better, they are afraid because they know if they don't offer or promise there's going to be X number of hours or X number of levels, that they will do worse in their crowdfunding or their sales. It's the unfortunate truth. Like, we have to be nuts. Corey isn't an Amigan, thank goodness. He's going to help keep us even less crazy. But the point is, like, you have to really, really love video game design as an art form to kind of stick to your guns and say, no, I'm not going to pad the game with a bunch of kind of disposable, non-creative levels. I'm not going to do what I think makes the game worse, even though that would be the easier path marketing-wise.
Yeah, and I have a thing, like I'm working on I say working, kind of air quotes, on a beat 'em up game myself. It's, I kind of been tinkering with ideas for probably the better part of 15 years. I've started doing some art. There's like a design document, but it's one of those things that when that ever takes form, I'm terrified to see how much of it survives the real world and how much is going to have to change, because that's like kind of inevitable. I'm noticing, by the way, Bardic probably posted this like 15 minutes ago, because I'm terrible at looking at chat, but he was asking if there's a mode of this game, or will be, I should say, with no actual dialogue.
There will be, if you want really fast action, at the very least, there will be a boss rush mode that's just going to be back-to-back all the boss fights, one after another. If you want like a really quick fix of like the really more challenging, more keep your brain active action, like the bigger, higher stakes action and nothing else in between, you can get that burst of kind of adrenaline. But as far as the rest of the game, there will definitely be a very fast way to skip the dialogue, so it won't be very intrusive at all. And I think you agree, Jigga, that we're finding a nice balance of, and keep in mind, we could have been button mashing and getting through the dialogues.
Of course, like
fast.
for people watching the stream, we're getting like, whenever there's dialogue happening in the demo, it's like, oh great, now we can stop the chat.
Exactly right.
We're
so
not like rushing through it.
Gotten through each dialogue in seconds, like literally like 2 or 3 seconds. But
having said that,
not pressing the button so we could talk more.
Having said that, like, I do think that that's definitely something that there is room to address. I will say overall, like, speaking of, that sort of memorable moment thing, I think that's one of the things that this game does really well, even in this early version. Like,
thank you.
The game keeps moving, stuff keeps happening. We're not stuck on the same screen fighting the same guys forever. And every like 1 or 2 screens, there is something happening. And then whenever you have those little, cinematic flourishes, they're just enough to kind of, move some form of narrative forward, but not really get in the way. And I think that's one of those things that a lot of games could stand to do a better job with, that kind of thing.
Right, and like that's really important too. Like the aesthetic philosophy of Metro Siege is going back to the influences that inspired the whole genre before it existed as a genre, the actually Hollywood vigilante movies of the late 80s, early 90s. So I think you can tell we're not being crazy. There's not like obscenely, ridiculously giant. Like Officer Bob is pushing it, but there are people that big. There's not going to be like ridiculous giants. There's not going to be suddenly in the later levels aliens and cyborgs. It's more down to earth. It's more like what you might have seen in a Hollywood street fighting or vigilante movie back in the day. And like you see, we do those things, like we handle these really quick cutscenes or camera movements very sparingly. They only take a second, but it enriches the storytelling of the world. It gives you that split second of breath. It reminds you what's going on. Like, oh yeah, I'm chasing Officer Bob because he escaped down this. Those kinds of things. That kind of additional storytelling, and it's stuff that the little extra things, like that little flyer that I just taped to the with pixel art, taped to the column there, the support column.
Right.
that starts fluttering before the train arrives, and then the palette starts changing to make it glow, and then the train arrives. And John Takiris worked. Thank you so much. John Takiris worked so hard. The same way I was working as a visual artist, John Takiris was working as the sound guy to make. Keep in mind, the Amiga has 4 sound channels. They all do sound samples, but you only have so much memory to go with. And if you want a song, a lot of Amiga games, pathetically enough, you had to choose in the menu, do I want music or do I want sound?
Yeah.
Sound effects. And that, to me, that's terrible. So the programmer had to work with the musician to do an enormous amount of extra programming and work to make great sounding music that reserves at least one sound channel at all times, sometimes more. And there's a whole system to prioritize sound effects, so you're overriding one sound because a more important sound, but you don't override an explosion sound with a footstep sound. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And like I'm sure my impression anyway is that, like, yeah, there are even back then examples of Amiga games that, like, not even super late ones, that had sound effects and music, and so it was never like a matter of being impossible or necessarily even a technical limitation per se, but more so that, like, it was, I guess, just complicated enough that you had to dedicate resources to it, whether it's time, effort, or memory.
All of the above. So think of it this way. You have to have a programmer that's knowledgeable enough to fix the issue and make it so it can support both. You have to find a musician who's willing to work for the price and is willing to make a song with only 2 sound channels instead of 4.
Right.
And the musician has to work with the programmer. Like, the amount of sound engineering for those incredibly atmospheric sounds of the train approaching, the wind blowing through the tunnel, and music and sound effects. They just did an amazing job. So shout out to John Takiris and Alex Brown. Yeah,
definitely. And I think that like really the core of it, I think, just like, again, not a technical thing at all, really, barely a logistical thing, but just like the way it happened to work out that games were developed most of the time, the way sound production was approached from a practical logistical standpoint meant that you would hire someone, they did a song, and they sent you a floppy, and then that's done. Doesn't really leave room for the necessary, like, engineering to make it work the way you would want it to work as a player.
Yep. And with the prices people were willing to pay the musicians, if they said, by the way, we need you to make a great song, and you have to tie one hand behind your back and work extra hard and work on all kinds of technical issues with the programmer, they will tell you to go screw yourself.
Yeah. Not even entirely, unreasonably so.
No, not at all. Like I said, like these days, if you're making literal retro games, you're doing it for the passion, because with the same amount of hours spent and the amount of skills you had to build to do it, there's near infinite, much easier ways to make much more money.
That's a sobering yet sad thought, but sure. I mean, it takes a certain brand of passionate lunatic.
You have to love it. You have to love the art form. You have to have that creative itch that you need to scratch, and that love for overcoming challenges. And
I think that like, I guess that's for me too, just in general, like there's something about, like, creativity in general that it's just like it's an urge, right? It's not, it can kind of come and go over the course of your life. Some periods you might feel less of a need. Sometimes it might really be like what keeps you alive. But at the end of the day, like, it's usually something, there's like a compulsion that, like you said, an itch you gotta scratch. And sometimes it's, sometimes you just really crave terrible junk food, and there's no logical explanation for it, but you just feel it in your bones. And I think creativity can be a lot like that, where it's just, this is just what I gotta do. Doesn't really, whether it makes sense or not, doesn't come into the equation really. And
I think the ultimate example of that I think you'll relate with very well is are you insane? Are you literally starting a new project now? So, like, you have all this work to do for these other games that you already started. And, like, that's the sick thing. My idea of relaxing of resting, in air quotes, from working on one of my other games is starting up another game project. It's like a glutton for punishment. You just end up with these ideas, and you have to let them out, and it's torture to not start on it. So it's like, I'll be more refreshed coming back. I used to do the same thing with fine art paintings and drawings. It's like, I'll get a painting going. Like if it's oil, I'll put that aside to let it dry. In the meantime, I'm working on another painting. And then when that one needs time to dry, I'll pick back up the other one. And there is a benefit to that, because you end up getting new ideas and you come back with a fresh eye.
For sure.
When you come back to your other project. But it is also a form of lunacy and self-punishment. But,
I used to jokingly kind of make fun of my dad for, as I like to put it, his hobby appears to be collecting hobbies. And I don't do that as much anymore, because I feel like it's increasingly applying to myself.
Discipline. You have to you have to draw a line at some point and be responsible, which can be hard, but you have to find that balance. Like I've said to our teammates, like sometimes they think, oh, we really should get a video out now, or I really need to get this feature done. And I've told my teammates so many times, and sorry, I've got a little, I need to drink some water too.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Please do.
I've told them, if you are crunching and you feel all this pressure, like I really need to do something, and your brain is not letting you focus, and your brain is obsessing like, man, I really need to play that level of Dishonored right now. Great franchise, by the way. But like whatever game, like there's a reason your brain is doing that. None of the people I work with are lazy. None of them are responsible. So there come moments after you've been crunching for a year or so on something. Don't be guilty. Don't, like, this is your brain telling you you need a break from what you're doing. And that's an important thing that I think too many people that are like us don't allow themselves, or they feel guilty to like once a year take a day off and like veg out and engage in the what are they called, the not the kind of guilty pleasures. Like you were talking about eating junk food. But one there was, I just thought of it, and I just want to mention it now before we get into other things or stop. And you know, you're going to have to kick me off the stream, I think, at some point. But you had mentioned a while ago the Neo Geo version, and you used the word port. Keep in mind, everyone, and you did not mean that in any derogatory way. In the same exact way, you could tell we're putting incredible work and passion into making the Amiga version as amazing it can be, despite the fact that it's on the Amiga. We are going to put the same kind of passion and extra work. For example, to get all those moves to work on the Amiga, we had to use a very small amount, a shockingly small amount of body parts that were moving around. But the trade-off is the stiffness and the weirdness of some of the animations and the poses. Well, that limitation does not exist at all. So if you're an obsessive freak like us, what we're going to do for the Neo Geo version, and we already started, is hand repixel every frame of every animation for every character in the game, so that the Neo Geo version is worthy of what that system is capable of.
Right.
So
there's a little bit of that even
the
in
Neo Geo version suffer for the fact that the first version we made is an Amiga version.
Right. You can see there's a little bit of that on display in like the Kickstarter video, right? There's like
exactly.
2 shots at least, you can sort of see it. And I guess like that's the thing too, going back to again about the whole promising too much and delivering on multiple platforms and everything. Like you're handling this responsibly, like I said, much like you did with Damon Clove. You do essentially one version at a time, and you know, each is kind of building on what came before. You know, taking a different approach with the Amiga ST lowest common denominator situation.
Exactly.
Of like you're building the equivalent of the ST version first, and then you know you're taking that and adding onto it to, you know, not in the literal sense ST to Amiga, but Amiga to Neo Geo, I guess in this case. which I'm
And you're
excited to see how
exactly
that
right.
works out. And I
Thank
mean,
you. But
you know,
yep,
it's good.
yep.
Well, I was going to say good enough. It's already a cool game on the Amiga.
Thank you. Yep.
So I'm, you
Yep.
know, the bar is pretty high. Well, I was
Thank
going to
you.
say for this type of game on the Neo Geo. Funnily enough, there's not that many beat 'em ups on Neo Geo, and most of them aren't that good. But at least,
Yep.
you know, from a visual presentation standpoint, what you would expect on the Neo Geo is a little bit different
Yeah,
than what
just
you would expect on the
Amazing.
Amiga.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean the power level there. The one thing that is
yeah.
a shock, and someday we could have a nerdy conversation about this, is the Neo Geo is so powerful, but all of the eggs graphically are in one basket. It's all sprites.
Yeah, it's
It's the
pretty nuts.
only thing that's not sprites visually is the HUDs. There's a dedicated static non-scrolling
HUD
layer that's
layer,
made out
yeah.
of 8 pixel by 8 pixel tiles. So you can have a very intricate HUD and it's not eating up your sprite power. However, the drastically less expensive Mega Drive is a powerhouse in some ways that literally the Neo Geo has no dream of competing with, and most people have no idea because of how beautiful Neo Geo games are. But if you make the mistake of making a game where you're really maxing out, okay, what are the strengths of the Mega Drive? You could do an enormous amount of parallax scrolling and still have your sprites for all the action and characters and explosions. Right. You try to do that on the Neo Geo, you're gonna run out of sprites.
Yeah,
like that is shocking for most people to hear that have played, but you will actually notice if you look at even the most gorgeous AAA beat 'em up games or shmups on Neo Geo, there's not a ton of parallax. There's not a lot of layers or Metal Slug. Often there's only one layer, or there's just like the top half of the screen, there's like a second layer peeking out, a back layer.
Yeah.
There's really not that much, and that is why.
Yeah,
everything is made out of sprites.
Like like an overdraw issue, kind of. Not technically the same thing, but it's sort of like that. Like
console. Yeah, every console has a dead limit of sprite pixels per scan line, and as soon as you cross that, that's when you get either sprite flicker, where parts of the sprite or the whole sprite flashes off and on, or even worse, some sprites will just nope out and just be invisible for prolonged seconds, or until that thing represented by that sprite moves to a different part of the screen vertically.
There's, funnily enough, I was just reminded, this is a complete non sequitur, but there are, in fact, I think in like King of Fighters 2000, maybe 2001, like one of those where you had the striker system where you could call in your teammates during the fight, where there's like a handful of situations you can set up to hard crash the game. By like overrunning the sprite limit. Like you do like certain moves that put like explosions and stuff on screen. You call in your assist, and there's this text like debug message of like sprite limit over, and then like the game crashes. But you know that's still you know, that's pretty impressive to be able to do that.
Those games have very little parallax, especially when they scale in and out, and they don't have like the line scrolling fancy floor like Street Fighter 2 does. And those are the reasons. If you wanted to do that for the most part on Neo Geo, every column, every single pixel row of that floor would be a whole bunch of 16 pixel wide sprites going across the entire screen for every pixel height of the floor. That would be your entire sprite budget.
Yeah, funnily enough, I guess it might be easier to do like just with the way, because you like the Neo Geo sprites can be like infinitely tall, right? So you could do like a line scrolling wall, I guess, more easily.
Yep.
I'm not sure if any games did that, but anyway.
Or you just bake things into animations. But anyway, I'll shut up. So,
Well, I was trying to see if we could hop in take another round here. I'm not sure if it froze up on my end. I'll just refresh, I guess.
Let's see. No, I think it's, I'll go into network and connect. So
just says wait. It looks
ready.
like it froze. The music's still playing, but I'll just refresh and I should get
it almost certainly it timed out because nobody was doing anything.
Yeah, makes sense. But yeah, I figure we can do like one more round, because there are still things that I want to that I wanted to kind of comment on, both in terms of little flourishes that I enjoyed, but also maybe some questions and concerns. And like, I'm definitely kind of fired up knowing it makes sense, but I didn't know it for a fact when I played the demo previously, I guess, like how much of this is just, like you said, a tech demo, almost like proof of concept. Obviously nothing's final, but like the degree to which, or the nature of which, like some of these things are expected to change and evolve, I think are kind of interesting.
Yeah, there's a ton. There's a ton. And people like you, unfortunately, Goaty has that really strict, I want to play the game when it's done philosophy. But you've already played this demo. So if you're interested in Goaty, if you're still watching, if you stuck through all the geeky stuff, definitely I invite you guys to playtest as the game develops. I love the feedback of guys like you.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going to say, you know, on the topic of narrative flow and progression stuff, like presenting the story and the world as it's you know, unfolding. I did remember. Now it's been a while since I played it, but I do recall in Demon Claw, there were a couple of those like boss cutscenes that were awesome, and then you die and try again, and it's like drove me nuts. That like you have to watch, even if it was like
through them again.
I don't remember the specifics of it, but there's something like I think the dialogue maybe only plays once, or maybe you had to press, like, I'm very sensitive to those kinds of things. I can't give you like specific feedback because I don't remember the details, but there was something like that where either the cutscene played out, or like, yeah, you could skip the dialogue, but there's still like the animation of the text box coming up and disappearing, or like the boss appearing on screen just has an animation that's awesome, but just long enough to be extremely aggravating after 3 or 4 attempts.
Get back into the action, exactly. So there should be, and I actually don't remember on the Mega Drive the extent to which this exists, but it already exists on the modern version of Demon Claw. But if you hold the button for a solid second, it'll just skip everything. And literally anything that was like the character like floating onto the screen, any intro animation, it'll just skip it all. I don't remember, keep in mind, or you don't know this actually, so you can't keep it in mind yet, but one of the reasons that Demon Claw, the Mega Drive and the Neo Geo version is so late is, let's just say, if you have a team of 2 programmers working on that system's version and you lose one of your programmers, or if for any reason the programming manpower can't work on the game for a period of time, or like I said, you lose one, you cannot easily replace a hardcore 16-bit hardware banging programmer.
I can see that
in the middle of a project. And so that is why the whole end 8 months for the Mega Drive version, I was up, like the people, Simon, the programmer at Neofit who programmed the Mega Drive version almost single-handedly, is such an amazing guy. It's the dedication Neofit have to quality and really standing up for, like, really putting in the extra mile. They lost a programmer, so the one guy for 90% of the development or more was the sole programmer, and for the last 8 months, when it was already late, he was up with me till 3 or 4 in the morning every day, including weekends, to actually make sure the game finishes as soon as possible without compromising the quality. But because of that, there's things I don't remember that were like, it would really be nice if you could totally skip the boss intro. Yeah. And so that's the way it's supposed to happen. There's at least that to a degree. I would try holding down, either pressing start, that might work, or holding down the usual button you would use to advance through dialogue. And at the very least, that'll save you a lot of time. But what should happen, and what does happen on the modern version, is it's a full skip. Like, boom.
Yeah, because that's the thing I'm like missing in a lot of games, where I'm thinking
Yeah.
of the because this came back to the idea, like I think it was Bardic and Chan who mentioned like this part right here, like is there a mode where this like doesn't even show up? Because I remember I didn't actually play it, but I might have played a demo or watching footage of that remake of the NES DuckTales game that came out like 15 years ago from Way Forward, where like they redid all the art, they like all the level backgrounds were 3D, they got the cartoon voice cast to do to do VO for all the dialogue, and that's like that's fancy, Christmas list game design and all that. But you see it once and it's like, well, already the first time these little added bits of dialogue just kind of ruin the flow of the game, but especially if you've already seen them, it's like it's just tedium. And even the sort of the excuse, if I can call it that, of like, well, you can always skip the dialogue if it bothers you, like doesn't actually address the core issue. If stopping to start the dialogue, bringing up the text box, and then dismissing it is already disruptive to the flow.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So
I think those kinds of things are just very sensitive to do them properly, and that's one thing I think like that's really been kind of lost with like arcade game design sensibilities, where when you had little cinematic flourishes in a game like The Punisher or Alien vs Predator or something, it's literally like 2 seconds because they don't want to just have you standing there watching a movie.
Exactly.
For game design reasons, but also for cash flow reasons. The game shouldn't be stopping for too long.
There are hopefully people standing behind you waiting for their turn at the cabinet. Absolutely. In the arcade.
And it's like I think so many more modern games could stand to, again, like not dismiss that as like an obsolete way of doing things just because it used to be done that way, and even if it was in some ways informed by the realities of operating an arcade. It turns out that there are good reasons to do it that way for the player experience.
That's kind of like what I was saying about the difference between production value and gameplay value. You can over production value something, and I wanted to bring that topic up on you can overwhelm something. That's why I brought up the Matrix 2.
Yeah.
You can deaden someone with so much nonstop explosions and flashes. Like, I noticed I was watching a long play of that Ninja Turtles game, and I'm like, every few seconds there's this amazing, super dramatic set piece of like a giant boss. I'm slightly exaggerating, but like really, like they spent a huge budget, and these artists spent a really long time making these really extravagant introductions for these big boss fights. And it's like, what's interesting is people would have enjoyed it more if there were half as many and they were spread apart. But you need breathing room. It's like the thing I said about cacophony. You know what I mean? Like you sometimes more is not more. You pour enough sugar into your cake recipe and no one wants to eat your cake. And it's like if it's nonstop, whoa, like there's a famous expression I can't think of, a really common expression that means that exact thing. It's like, ironically, I'm thinking of the line from the Incredibles. Was that the first one or the second one where the guy wants to give everyone superpowers because if everyone's super, no one is super?
Right.
It's like if it's non-stop, crazy off the wall, full screen intros to bosses, then none of them really have much impact or meaning.
Yeah, I think
it's like a song that's nothing but like the crescendo.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's I gotta agree with you for sure, but at the same time I also think like you can approach that in so many different ways, and I think again going back to like doing more with less and like just focusing your efforts and resources. So, like if you were doing in terms of producing art, which is something I see it through that lens for the most part. Like as much as I can enjoy making something, like just indulging in doing something the coolest way I could imagine or whatever, I do find a great deal of satisfaction in like doing something efficiently. And this is something I think and I'm sure you can relate to this too, like once you have some experience in like production on a budget and timeline, there's like an inherent satisfaction to be able to deliver something on time and on spec, or just doing a good job of it. And like the problem solving inherent in figuring out what's a good approach to doing things can be really satisfying creatively. So I tend to try, like, if I'm animating characters, which is kind of my my area, I and again, like looking at, I was saying before about like YouTube pixel art tutorials or whatever, like I see so many things that beginners, like, they approach things, which is not meant as an insult, it's just everyone
No, of course not.
start somewhere, but like there's so many kind of assumptions, whether we're talking about like color palettes or canvas size or whatever, like people they bite off more than they can chew in a lot of ways that they don't even realize. And I think it's the same with animation, of like, instead of like, oh, we have no, we don't have those sprite limits and memory limits that we had 30 years ago, so let's just do all the animation we want. I mean, you can do that, and I'm not saying you necessarily get a worse result, but if you approach it from like, all right, how few frames can I get away with to make this work? And I mean, obviously in this game, you were very much working that way, because you don't even have like full frames of animation per se with this like paper doll sort of technique. But like, I can find it pretty exciting if I manage to draw something and like, oh, I didn't have to add these extra anticipation frames that I thought I would have needed to. It kind of looks okay anyway. Like, that's pretty exciting. So like trying to keep things simple, and I think that goes so much for like these little presentational flourishes. I love the fact that like the color palette shifts here, like I guess it's like indicating some kind of lighting change, and it doesn't even really matter if I understand specifically what it is. I just like, oh cool, it's it just feels alive, and there's like something happening. There's a effort being put into presenting something.
It's an abstracted way to create that more authentic sense of movement and progression in a subway train, right? So what's funny is you could see that drastic change. There was no way technically on the Amiga we could make it so that you literally entered a tunnel. So it's a quick palette change and then background swap trick to create the illusion that, oh, I'm in a dark tunnel now, and there was that lighting shift in my eyes, and I wasn't focusing on what's out the window, so it works. Like, I feel like I'm on a long journey in a subway train, and I'm going in and out of tunnels. Like, that looked weird because we're in the middle of a dialogue.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking about this before too, that there's like some there's some aspect of this whole house of cards that isn't quite being paused the way it should be when the dialogue box is up.
Exactly.
I guess.
Once the dialogue box initiates, note to Alex, if you're watching, we have to make sure that when we get to this car, stop allowing the code to loop through the different transitions.
There we go.
Oh, I just did another one that's hilarious.
Just in case someone's gonna play this game and stop to do a 2-hour game design rant on this particular screen.
Exactly.
Stranger things have happened.
This is so important to have. Another variant of your point, something that drives me nuts, is you'll get these, especially green in the gills studios, or like people get together to make an indie game, or just you'll have a situation where a studio gets a team together with no art director, and they're like, why do we need an art director? These guys have all worked on other games before, they do good artwork, so we're all set. Like, everyone will make good artwork, and therefore the game will look good. And I saw your smirk, so I know you know where this is going. This is another variant of that cacophony thing. Without art direction, and this is like, I ran into this when I entered, and I was always very pragmatic this way, which is why they loved me in the mobile game industry, because I could produce professional quality results fast and say, what's next? So the game designers, they loved me because every idea they had that they wanted to put in the game, there was never an art bottleneck, right? Whereas there was another artist who, maybe he'll watch this someday, so shout out to you. You know who you are. He has produced some of the. He was on those forums. You might know him if I said his handle. But some of the best pixel art you've ever seen, he does. But when he worked in the industry, his same obsession with every pixel has to be perfect. It has to be the most amazing thing, even if it's a background prop, even if it's like something that's, and like that's the thing, is that when you're creating art for any art asset for a game, you should never ever do it in a vacuum. And what I do, I don't know if you know, the whatever program you're using now supports layers, and I use ProMotion NG because it's by far the best for making legit pixel art to the technical constraints of the Amiga or the Mega Drive or the Neo Geo. It's got so many amazing built-in features. That's where it evolved from. Deluxe Paint and Brilliance. And I've had a big influence on a lot of the features. I've been a friend with the programmer for probably 2 decades now as it evolved, because when I finally switched off of an Amiga to do my pixel art to a PC, I discovered ProMotion before it was ProMotion NG, early version. And I started contacting that programmer with feedback and feature requests. But anyway, the point is, every young, passionate artist, they're like, okay, I've been tasked with making a discarded old boot on the ground in the background that's like sticking out of the alleyway. I am going to make this the most amazing, detailed, kick-ass discarded boot that anyone has ever seen pixeled in their freaking life. And so they're going to spend an enormous amount of time putting way too much work, way too much detail, and most importantly, way too much contrast into something that is supposed to be there aesthetically just to enrich the environment and should not be a distraction at all. So without an art director pulling everything into focus and making everything subordinate and make sure everyone is using the right art style and making sure stuff that is not important doesn't, it's a variant. I'm sure you've seen me talk about confetti syndrome in our videos. So one of the variants of confetti syndrome is that very thing. It's like, and a lot of Amiga games are guilty of this, sadly. It's like, I only have so many colors to use, so I'm going to use the full range of light to dark. If I'm making a gray brick on the wall, I'm going to make damn sure, because I have 6 shades of gray from white to black. I'm going to use all of them for every brick. And then Corey coined a phrase, brickitis. Once you're rendering the bricks and not a wall, every brick is screaming, I'm a brick. And its contrast is just as high as the critical health pickup, the enemy on the screen, enemy shots that are coming at you. They're all rendered with the same level of contrast. And that ruins the visibility, the communication, and the aesthetic. It flattens the game out. If things that are supposed to be way in the background are rendered with every bit as much detail and contrast as things that are supposed to be in the foreground, you've spent way more work adding way too much detail and contrast, and your game looks way less good, and it's harder to play because at a glance it's harder for the important things to pop out. And like Goro Mark of the Wolves and Last Blade 2 on the Neo Geo are 2 pinnacle, most brilliant, gorgeous, stunning, not just from an artistic standpoint, but from mastering the knowledge of how to create incredible visuals that set a mood and communicate brilliantly to the player. Those games are virtually unmatched. They are so beautiful, and like the characters pop so well off of the environment, yet the environment is still incredibly rich and interesting.
Like really lush.
Even when you're in a Japanese temple with wood columns and paper walls that is ablaze, completely on fire, it is still not distracting, and you still see the characters beautifully. That
for
is
sure.
how
Like
much they mastered their craft.
It was I was laughing a little bit when we were talking about, like, working with junior artists and stuff, because as I mentioned previously, I used to teach at a school for game development. I attended myself many years ago as an artist, and teaching game art is really interesting because, like, it came up so many times, like, and it was kind of a journey I'd gone through myself of, like, for many people who create art, it's a deeply like personal thing. Well, I should say no one, but most people don't learn how to create and do art in like under the same kind of circumstances that you do when you work with other people, whether it's at a company or as a hobby thing or whatever. But like there is like the individual piece, the individual asset, the thing you are working on is always like subservient to the greater whole that it is supposed to be part of. And most people don't really have that experience of even like thinking of it in those terms. And it's like truly like the whole, the game has to sort of come first. And like art is and I mean, just like I recognized everything you just said, I'm sure you recognize all this too. I'm not teaching you anything new.
It's for the other viewers who hopefully,
there's other people here, right?
Stuck around all this time. Thanks so much, everybody. We're glad you hopefully find this interesting. But going to your point, I'm sure almost everyone can relate. When you were a kid, do you remember you were going to draw something like someone's face, and you busted your butt and you tried really hard and you drew a really detailed eye? And then you moved over to maybe draw the next eye. And then you start drawing the nose and you're like, ah, crap, I just noticed one of the eyes is bigger than the other eye. It's not in the right place. And there's no way I'm going to have the room to draw this guy's chin. So I'll tape another piece of paper to the bottom of this piece of paper so I can draw his chin. Or I'll tell people I did that on purpose. It's cool framing.
Yeah, it's my style.
That's why I said don't design things in a vacuum when you're making assets. Like when I did fine art painting, I used a method called alla prima, which is you literally think of it as pointing a camera at a subject intentionally very out of focus. So you only see main forms, major shapes, major values, and major colors, and you slowly bring everything into focus. If you design your game graphics and your mock-up, your original game screen mock-up that way, you're evolving and polishing everything simultaneously, so everything naturally will work great together. If you are designing your player character sprite and you're simultaneously designing the level 1 environment right behind the character, you know exactly what kind of levels of contrast and what kind of colors you should use so the player pops off beautifully, and you're learning simultaneously how you need to mute the colors, lower the contrast in the background to get a nice pop, and you're in really good shape. So someone had commented that they thought a lot of Amiga games had that problem because the platform was so much more powerful than the 8-bit systems before. It's like they had a giant box of crayons and they wanted to show off. This is me paraphrasing, but that is true to a degree. But I think much more than that, the overwhelming number of pixel artists for most games on the Amiga were new, young, and fresh, and it was an evolving art form, and they did not have the concepts in their head. It was too young of an art form to even have the concepts in their head of less is more, of controlling your contrast, of just because you have eight shades of gray does not mean you should use that in everything you do. These are things you learn, and that the entire art form has learned over times. So that's the only negative comments we ever get, other than Damon Claw is too short and Mike, you need to shut up and let other people talk. Guilty as charged. Believe it or not, I'm doing my best. Interrupt me or kick me off whenever you need to.
You're in good company, but by all means, I'm enjoying what you're talking about. So.
Well, thank you. But so it's really, those are things that had to be learned over time, and without a more seasoned art director, and you're a young, passionate, you could be a great artist. You could be a better artist than me, but without that experience, you might make a game screen that looks really difficult to look at. Every one piece itself in a vacuum on a mute colored solid color background might be better than anything I ever made in my professional career. But without that experience and without learning those things the hard way, without learning that you're never designing an asset for a game you're designing a piece of a greater whole, and you always have to have that in mind. You always have to double check, and the important thing is a lot of times the artists were not allowed to iterate. Like, there was too tight a deadline and too tight a budget. So even for like that amazingly high quality game Rastan Saga 3, I could tell that like some artists were told to design a fish man, and some artists were told, and they didn't necessarily know what background it would be on, and they didn't know what other enemies would be on the screen. So you ended up with things like, boy, for a fish man, he is bizarrely big compared to a bear man or some other, like a rhinoceros. Like, why is that fish man taller than the elephant man or whatever, you know? And like, why are the contrasts so low on these sprites and so high on these sprites? Because different artists did them, and they never were given a chance to see it in the context of the game and tweak their palettes and tweak their detail.
Right. Because I was like, the thing that always came up again, like in that teaching context, is like to understand that, again, like the whole is what matters, and like nothing. Like, individual assets don't matter. And I like, one way that I would like continually come back to in terms of not necessarily like in the same exact context, it was maybe more about, you know, putting together portfolios and applying for internships or what have you. But like, basically the idea of like, no one, like, creating the most amazing looking art in the world is fine, but like, given enough time, anyone could do it. Like, if you had infinite time and resources, you could do, you know, you could paint the Sistine Chapel, right? But
the missing link is the passion. If you don't dedicate yourself to growing and learning, but you have to, it takes a certain kind of person, sure. But what I was getting at is being able to actually, like, in the real world, so to speak, if you want to have more than a grain of rice for every day of work you put in, or whatever phrasing you use. It isn't really about being the one to be able to make the best or the prettiest art. It's about being able to produce art that's good enough, you know, quickly, and like having the sense to know the difference between, you know, making something look amazing for the sake of like making it look amazing versus creating art assets that perform its duty in the context of how it's presented. You know, like that's another thing, another kind of, I guess I have some of these I don't know what the word is for it, but just, you know, the morsels of, you know, ideas that would come up, you know, they would never go out of style in terms of, you know, teaching the same courses year after year. Like, it was always a relevant topic. But like, what was I going to say? Almost like a core truth that will never change, whether your game is 2D or 3D, no matter what. There's core things, like, you don't want the player distracted by unimportant information.
Exactly. Right. That's what I was getting at. Like, information, like the first and foremost objective of a video game art asset isn't to look good. It is to communicate information.
Exactly.
So like, whether it's a HUD or a font or a character design or a boot in the background, like, it's meant to be there to communicate something. And the more effectively it can communicate that, the better of an art asset it is. So that boot being like super awesomely rendered does not actually do a better job of communicating the atmosphere of the location, which is like the point of it, than if it had been a low contrast thing in the background. So like, I think that there is that kind of mental pitfall of falling into, of not understanding or realizing, you know, that depending on the context of where something is on screen and what role it has in the visual presentation, like, it can really affect what constitutes a good you know, good art, essentially.
When it comes to individual visual game assets, better is worse. So what I mean by that is, if you look at the one thing like the boot in a vacuum and you bust your ass to make it the most awesome boot possible, then you put it on the greater whole you should have been looking at the whole time while you were making your boot to fit well in the actual context. You could have done 1/10 as much work and it would look drastically better, and the overall game would look drastically better.
For sure.
So always work on the visuals of a whole level at once, a game when you're designing a new enemy, Always. And when you're designing an environment, the first thing you should do when you're designing a new environment for a game, slap those player characters on a top layer and design your environment under those. You can always hide them later once you know those characters, those details and contrasts work well. Then you can hide them for a while, but always bring them back to double check, because you could get carried away and go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, this is really just purely venting at this point, but one thing that would drive me absolutely up the wall too is when people don't consider, like, especially in the context of pixel art, but even in general, people not taking into account like pixel resolutions and aspect ratios and like just the canvas of where something goes, and like designing something with no apparent thought as to literally like the frame in which this is supposed to fit. But anyway, now we're like completely devolving into ranting about video game art pet peeves, which, to be fair, I am finding very enjoyable, but I think I also have this creeping sensation of having to pull on some kind of emergency brake lever here before you fully derail.
Absolutely. Even those who stuck with us, some of them are dwindling off now. So again, we appreciate all of you guys.
Yes, very much. This has been a great deal of fun, Mike, and I feel like we both have a laundry list of topics that we didn't even get to touch upon and would be happy to discuss at length. I feel like we both may be suffering from the same affliction of just endless rambling on topics we are passionate about, which you know makes this a lot of fun, but also kind of necessitates maybe wrapping things up lest we go on far beyond reasonable lengths. But before I do let you go, just kind of to wrap things up about the game and the ostensible reason for having you on here, which is the upcoming release eventually of Metro Siege. I'm sure there's much work yet to put into this game, but it is currently on Kickstarter. I'm hopeful that more people have been excited to check this game out after this stream. It's I'm just seeing the money counter going up here. We can
awesome.
We can pretend maybe that was thanks to our endless rambling here. But the game is doing very well relative to its extremely modest goal, at least. But you have a bunch of stretch goals, and there's no upper limit to how much money can be raised. I'm sure you will accept whatever you're given. I would highly urge anyone to check this out. There is let's see here if I can operate this little command here. So there's a link in chat to the official website where you can learn more about the game. You can play this online demo that we've just been playing. It's I think there's an Amiga disk image you can download. Is that correct? But you can also just play it in the browser.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, there's several ways to play it on a real or emulated or FPG Amiga, or you could just play it from any web browser on any kind of computer, and you can play with someone else online like Jigga and I just did.
Right.
So make sure, definitely make sure you click the Learn How to Play button at MetroSiege.com first. It is very different in its core input structure from beat 'em ups. So if you're going in thinking it's going to play like in its inherent base controls, like Streets of Rage or Final Fight, you're going to be frustrated really fast. The big thing to know is that to grab a health pickup, you have to hold attack, and this will be a separate button on Neo Geo, but hold attack and tap down. Right. So what usually would do your low attack, if you're standing perfectly over a delicious trash turkey or trash burger, it'll grab it for you. This way, you never accidentally grab a health pickup just by walking over it when your friend desperately needs it, or when you're going over there to try to rescue your friend. You don't accidentally grab their trash turkey. That was one of the core reasons reasons too. In the same way as Alex, to attempt a grab, you don't just rub up against someone. To attempt a grab, you hold attack and tap forward, and you'll literally see your character lunge forward and try to grab, which means maybe there are going to be enemies later on that can get into a bit of a little bit of a contest, who might challenge that grab attempt in different ways and maybe punish your grab attempt, just like you will be able to do with enemies.
Yeah.
So there's meaning to the madness. I think you can vouch for it, Jigga. It doesn't take that long to get used to.
No, for sure. I feel it handles well.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Thank you.
like for sure, reading the instructions is crucial. It helps a lot. And you know, going back to talking about Knights of the Round and the blocking mechanics, like there's so much, like even Final Fight and the like you can end a combo with a grab by holding up or down, which is like an extremely essential technique in that game. And I had enjoyed the game, if not loved it, for probably 25 years before I realized that that was a thing. And it's like, well, you know, it's a game that's good enough that you can turn off your brain and mash buttons and still have fun with it. But there is a lot more to it. There's a lot more depth and elegance to its design that, you know, as is typical in arcade games, you know, it was maybe difficult enough to communicate in the context of an arcade cabinet. But when most people play these games today without the context of instruction cards and marquees or whatever, it's like kind of hopeless. So do make sure to educate yourself on how the game is meant to be played before playing it, and you are much more likely to have an actual good time with it. So so do check out Metro Siege, everyone. I highly encourage you to do so. I also encourage people, if you have enjoyed our lengthy ramblings about all kinds of things related to beat 'em ups, pixel art, and game design, and if you are a fan of my stream, I have a feeling that you probably are a fan of these kinds of things, or at least you tolerate them and put up with them. I would recommend checking out the BitBeamCannon YouTube channel. There's a link here on the website, and as mentioned, obviously there's a bunch of like development updates on all of the games, I guess, that you're working on here, you know, off and on. But there's also the forensic pixology, and I think there might be certain other, like I mentioned, there was that video you guys put up about talking about the AES Plus and the kind of implications for the Neo Geo collector market and for Neo Geo developers, for that matter. There's like a lot of, like, if you want to if you want to hear Mike ramble more, there's several hours worth of it on YouTube, and I highly recommend it. So it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here. And we're getting rated with
at the last minute.
Yeah, I mean, we at least, you get to say hi to all these people from Retrograde Tom's channel.
Hi, everyone. Sorry you missed the vast majority of the conversation and gameplay, but we were talking about Metro Siege, which is the latest offering from BitBeamCannon. We previously had done the Mega Drive version of Damon Claw. We're almost finished with the Neo Geo version of Damon Claw. And then Metro Siege we're working on with some other great independent game developers. That's part of how we're able to work on multiple projects, especially since we're wrapping up the really hard parts of Damon Claw as we speak. Not literally. I'm not doing it right now. But anyway, so if you do go to metrosiege.com, that's just a subpage of BitBeamCannon. So you could see all of our projects. You can actually just get the Mega Drive version of Damon Claw now. It's been out there for nearly a year, I think, at this point. I'm terrible with time.
Yeah, something like that.
But I'm pretty sure it's been available for purchase for about a year. And Jigga and Goaty both really liked it, so that should, if you're fans of theirs, that, to me, that was a great compliment. And like I said, it really puts wind back in our sails to get people that really can see the kind of love we're putting into the games we're working on. And then there's Metal Mac, which, if you guys liked the art of Damon Claw, that was very, very mostly done by Corey, who's not in this stream right now, but he's an amazing pixel artist, great gameplay design ideas, and Metal Mac is his first chance to be like the lead game designer, art director, and artist of a BitBeamCannon game. And it is obviously it is a spoof, a parody of, at its core, of Mega Man, But the cool thing is, and which will really become obvious, Corey and my brother Chris are working really hard on a playable demo that's really going to make it much more obvious on how this is a very intentional, comedic, tongue-in-cheek parody of many classic games, with the core aesthetic being Mega Man, but goofy. But then, like, every level is going to be themed to parody another great classic game franchise, like Mario, like Contra, things like that. And so the gameplay is going to be very varied, very different from core Mega Man. There's going to be a lot of creativity, a lot of humor, which is something that I personally always try to at least put. Even Damon Claw, which I wanted to feel mostly epic.
Right.
I hope you could tell there were some moments of intentional humor there.
Yeah, there's moments of levity. For sure.
Exactly. Like the mechanic of the dwarves being able to get stuck in their the spike traps on the floor, and then you could use them as a platform. Those kind of things,
Yeah.
But like, this game is a chance for BitBeam to really flex its funny bone, I would say. And there's going to be a lot of cool referential like homages and parodies and spoofs of not only great game franchises, but specific things you'll recognize, but always with a twist to it, a surprise, not only to the aesthetics, but to the gameplay,
Right.
most importantly.
I'm very excited to see more of it. I didn't back this, or at least not yet. Part of that is for financial reasons, but to be perfectly fair and to be honest, to me, this, like, the spoof kind of parody angle doesn't really resonate very well with me. But I do think, I have a lot of faith in you guys' game design chops, and certainly artistic chops. And I think there's I love a lot of things in these screenshots, like the use of color and talking about the contrast and readability and stuff. Like, it's clearly well crafted. And I'm definitely excited to see more of this game, to kind of learn more of it, because I'm sure I have great faith, knowing not just how much I enjoy Damon Claw, but in the Metro Siege demo, but I think you and I at least are on the same wavelength with a lot of things. And even from just hearing your conversations, I have a feeling that maybe me and Corey wouldn't be too far off either. So I'm sure there would be plenty of things to enjoy, regardless of my initial knee-jerk reaction to the kind of comedic tone of it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more for sure. And I'll be keeping a close eye. No matter what.
I will talk to Chris and Corey. If you are interested, I'm pretty confident that they would be very happy to send you the demo. Very select YouTubers and Twitch streamers will get the Metal Mac demo. So if you are interested in being one of those people, yours is the kind of feedback we'd especially like, because we'd have to win you over past the main aesthetic gimmick.
Sure.
And that makes, you know what I mean? Like,
if
we can,
if we can pull you into the game,
exactly. No, seriously,
I would love that. That would be a great deal of fun. And I'm not just, I'm being genuine with that I do think there's a lot of things about this that I think look very promising. There are a lot of things that do kind of make me a little hesitant, but I'm more than willing to be won over. So I'd love to give it a shot.
There's a comment we should address. Dispatche, is that how that's said? Dispatche. It looks more like a Mega Drive game to me. If you were talking about Metro Siege, probably the version you're seeing is the Amiga version, and thank you very much. It takes a lot of work to make an Amiga game with that many characters on screen and parallax and color look competitive with Mega Drive. But if you're talking about Metal Mac, most of the screenshots you're seeing are indeed the Mega Drive version. They are offering it for Mega Drive and Neo Geo. The Neo Geo version, just like with Metro Siege, will have a very large amount of visual enhancements over the Mega Drive version.
So is it the same deal there?
The Mega Drive version is no slouch. Yep.
Right, for sure. With the Mega Drive version essentially being completed first before work begins in earnest on Neo Geo?
It wasn't even exactly like that, or it wasn't supposed to be like that with the Damon Claw. It kind of ended up that way because of what I mentioned
the
with
development situation.
Programmers disappearing or that kind of stuff. So, which is why we're so late with the Neo Geo version of Damon Claw. But that whole time we were like, we were busting our butts working on the graphics for Neo Geo as well. But you've got the right idea. The best way to do it, you make the Mega Drive, or in the case of Metro Siege, Amiga version first, because that's like the lowest specs. That's the hardest time you're going to have to make the game look good. So that'll ensure you're really going to bust your butt to make it as good as you can
on screen,
for
by the way.
that platform. Right. And then so with...
Or I guess maybe that's the... sorry if I'm interrupting. I'm just like narrating the trailer we're seeing on screen.
Fine.
I guess it's 16:9, so is this the PC version?
Yeah, it's widescreen. That's the very still early. Like right there, you can see the fancy translucent shadows. It's widescreen. So the way we're doing for Metro Siege, the modern version, the graphics start as the Neo Geo version, and then we just add the nice things to have. The widescreen is a must, but then they're simply, we can make the shadows semi-transparent now because the Neo Geo is truly incapable of semi-transparent effects.
And on PC, it's like essentially
animations.
Zero extra effort.
It's for free. Exactly right. So it's got those, it's got an amazing amount, the modern version of like super customizable scan line CRT filters. So you can go to town. You could have pixel perfect, super crisp, or like super like, wow, I just hooked it up to a half dead CRT monitor, or anything in between, whatever your tastes are for that.
I feel like I have a barrage of question bubbling up here on the PC version of Metro Siege specifically, but I guess I'll hold on to those for another time, or else we'll be here all night, and it'll give me an excuse to maybe bring you on some other time, or catch up elsewhere. But lots of cool stuff happening. I can't help but notice you also have a page here for a game called Cyberjack, which I'm not particularly familiar with.
Yep, that is the only game that's truly back burner. As you could see, it was designed to work within the graphical specs and color palettes of 8-bit Nintendo. Theoretically, what you're seeing on screen, even with all the parallax, would be possible with a later generation 8-bit Nintendo cartridge that had the little helper chip in it.
Like the mapper stuff.
So exactly. So theoretically, that's possible, but we were just making it. I was programming it in Construct 3, which is the same thing I'm using to make the PC version of Damon Claw. But when it comes to Metro Siege, we've got a real programmer doing like crazy, real, like C,
like actual modern stuff.
Exactly.
Construct's it's pretty retro itself at this point, I think.
Yeah, it's been around a while. They do keep improving it and stuff. Construct 3, it's certainly, it was a wonderful kind of stepping stone authoring system for us before we built our infrastructure, and now we have real programmers to work with. And now that there's Scorpion Engine, where we can directly make retro games for Mega Drive, Neo Geo, and Amiga. We'll be doing another game called Anne's Legend, which I don't even think is on the website yet.
Doesn't look like it. No.
But so that's on the back burner too. We can't do too many things at the same time. We don't have that many different people we can collaborate with.
You're not quite, you're not, what's the word? You're not slumming it. You're keeping busy.
We're keeping busy. I literally, in a recent interview with another YouTuber, I said, and this is the truth, I've had to do this to pursue, Corey and I, making this our living, to build our infrastructure, to start building our fan base, to start making relationships with publishers and other developers to turn this into a reality. It has been damn near a decade since I've had an actual vacation, and I am always working late into the night and every weekend on our projects, on our videos, to make this a reality. But you could see that the gameplay, we got really far. This is Cyberjack we were working on before we decided to switch gears over to Damon Claw. And we got really far, but I always had this little annoying gnat in my, floating around inside my brain saying, when you spend the time to make this game, it would be great if we could work with an actual 8-bit Nintendo programmer and make a real 8-bit Nintendo version at the same time. And I'm thinking maybe even we could do simultaneously a Super Nintendo, a Mega Drive, and an 8-bit Nintendo version if we, because like by now we're building up enough of a fan base and people like our stuff, so we're getting contacted by hardcore
Right.
retro programmers that say, hey, let me know if you want to collaborate, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I could
So
see, you know, I
yeah,
don't have that strictly experienced myself, but I could kind of just,
yeah,
you know, envision, you know, having gone through what you have now with Demon Claw and with Metro Siege coming up and everything. Like, there's got to be something inherently pretty unsatisfying about going back to this and just doing this as essentially like a faux NES thing and just on PC. Like, I
right,
feel like at this point you would want to do it for real, or what's the point? Kind of,
yeah,
you know, the game might still be
yeah. I
cool.
mean,
You know, that's, I'm not
right.
disparaging it, but I can
So
see creatively
yeah,
why you would be a lot more. You know,
right.
once you've had a
And
taste.
that's the thing. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's not even creatively because every member of the team, we are super passionate about the art form of game design. And it doesn't matter if we use Construct, if someone else programs it for us, if heaven forbid someday AI, you know what I mean? Like could just program anybody's game they want on it. Um, the the love of game design itself, that makes it very gratifying.
Sure,
But we
sure.
are sickos that do like the extra
Right,
challenge and
right.
the extra
Yeah,
challenge and bragging rights to say we
yeah,
made this work on the actual 16-bit systems and or 8-bit despite all their limitations. Like I would love to collaborate with a Sega Master System programmer. I would love like they made one game where they attempted to knock off Castlevania. I can't think of the name of it right now for the
yeah. I know
Sega
the game you're
Master
talking
System.
about, but
Yeah, but like to me, it just doesn't even it doesn't cut
yeah,
it.
like you can tell
Not only,
what it's
yeah,
supposed to be, and it's you can kind
yeah,
of say like, you know, we were talking before about you don't want Metro Siege to be good for an Amiga game. That
exactly.
Master of Darkness, is that the game?
Yeah,
Something
that's
like
it.
that.
It's like
Yeah,
settle for this. You're on the
yeah,
Master
exactly. It's like
System.
it's
You
good for a
like
Master System
Castlevania.
game.
Settle for this. And
Yeah,
that's to me, that's inexcusable. The Master System could do a superior Castlevania style game than even Castlevania 3. The hardware is amazing. Not music. There were
right.
in Japan later generation Master System games that had a
Yeah,
sound
the
chip in the
FM. Yeah.
cartridge. Exactly. So you could be much more competitive with the 8-bit Nintendo, but out of the box, the 8-bit
I mean,
Nintendo, the
I
music
personally,
they made, yeah.
I have a soft spot for the Master System PSG sound, but
Yeah, yeah.
you're not
It's not
wrong. You're not
terrible.
wrong.
It's not terrible, but I would
It's a bit more
rather
limited for sure.
there were amazing masterpieces made on the 8-bit Nintendo sound chip and the Commodore 64.
Oh
That
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like there are some sound Commodore 64 games that make your ears bleed, but there are others that are amazing. And even to this day, even though it was made on an 8-bit computer, I still listen to it just to enjoy the music.
Yeah, of
It's
course,
the
of
same thing
course.
with the 8-bit Nintendo. Like there are like Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon Trap to me was the best Sega Master System
Hmm.
game. It is just it offers everything. It holds up. That's probably why they made a remake of it not too long ago, which was
Right.
superbly well done. But the point is, there's not a big library. That was such a smaller consumer base for the Master System. You know, the big studios that were like, screw that, we're going to stick to Nintendo. Probably
Yeah.
also Nintendo would have said, we're not going to let
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
sell
Yeah.
games on the 8-bit Nintendo if you also make it for Sega. So for all those different reasons, the system never got the love that it deserved in the fact that the system itself was so capable,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially visually. You could literally make games that looked very similar to 16-bit games
Yeah.
on
For
it.
sure.
Every sprite could be 16 color, every tile could be 16 color, and every I think it's every background. Yeah, every background tile can choose to use the 16 colors from the background palette or the 16 colors from the sprite palette.
Right.
It
And
in
16 colors
graphical
is a lot for one
horsepower
palette.
compared to
In
3 plus
those,
transparent
right,
on the
right.
yeah.
So even that you could get really creative about how to use those colors. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, we got to shut up.
right, right. No, this is exciting, and you brought up like 3 more things that I wanted to ask or talk
yeah.
about, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna eventually have to kick you
Yeah.
out, or we'll never
Yeah, no,
wrap things up here.
seriously, that's what you have to do
you
with
have
me.
generously
Yeah.
asked me to
Yeah.
just kick you out at some point, so that we
Yep.
can eventually end this. But again, thank you
Make
very,
it
very much
seem
for coming
nice.
on.
Yep, yep. Make it seem nice. I know you're
Yeah.
busy and you have to go, Mike.
Yes,
So I'm
yes. I
gonna
mean,
have to let you.
you have like 6 games to finish, so
Yep,
I wouldn't want
exactly.
to keep you all night. But yeah, thank you
Yep.
again very much for hanging out. This has been a lot of fun.
I knew it would be a pleasure. It is a pleasure. Have me back on any time to talk about any of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I might just hold you to that, and we'll
Yep.
see. We'll have plenty of reasons other than that, I'm sure, to cross paths and discuss
Yep.
ideas in the future. But yeah, I will let you go now, and I will reconvene with you at some other point to discuss, I don't know, top secret plans and cool games and
Awesome.
pixel art and
Absolutely.
Master System technical limitations or
Yep.
whatever else.
Yep. Great comments in the chat, but I will force myself to shut up and go so you can wrap things up. Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Yes. Thank you very much,
All
Mike.
right.
Good night. Bye.
All right. Bye.
All right. Guess I can take these off now. Oh, my ears are. I don't know. I feel like I just woke up or something. That was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm going to be wrapping things up here very, very shortly. Someone asked, will this be on YouTube? Yes. Twitch VODs are what they are. So that's not a sustainable way to keep videos permanent. Past broadcasts will be up there for, I think it's 60 days. But I do have a YouTube channel. I post stream VODs there on occasion, not super actively. But I'll make sure to transfer this and post this for anyone to catch up. And feel free, if you are so inclined, Mike, to link this or to use this in your promotion or whatever might seem appropriate or useful to you guys. It's my pleasure to help spread the word of cool developers doing cool things. So by all means. Thank you again, Mike, for coming on. This was kind of impromptu. We didn't really plan things out too much, but I had an absolute blast. I was thinking maybe I'd wrap this up and then maybe play something else, but quite frankly, I feel like I need to go to bed soon. I'm like excited and exhausted. Part of me wants to just go to bed. Part of me wants to shut the stream down so I can go do some pixel art. And yeah, it's a fun feeling to be excited about video games. Doesn't happen at every stream. Yeah, so go check out Metro Siege, check out the Kickstarter, check out BitBeamCannon's YouTube channel for more ramblings and ranting. And that'll be it for me tonight. I'll be back sometime later this week with video games of some form. We finished Bond. We played Shredder's Revenge. We even finished Prince of Persia on the Super Famicom. So now I'm free. I don't have a bunch of stuff that I'm like supposed to be getting to. So now all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what do I do on next stream? So I don't know. Probably more beat 'em ups. Maybe we'll go back to the Steam backlog and play some of the stuff I picked up over the past 6 months or so that I didn't get to play yet. There's probably a good couple of games in that list. I'll figure something out. But I will be back probably within the next couple of days, and as usual, you can keep an eye on my Discord for stream updates as they happen. Until then, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for the raids. Thank you everyone for joining what I guess we could call a sort of experimental stream, a little bit of an unusual format, but I enjoyed it a lot, and I feel like if you normally enjoy my streams of rambling about this stuff, you just got like the co-op 2-player version, so you probably enjoyed that as well. I hope so anyway. Now, let me just figure out who I can send you guys along to. Who else is streaming that we might raid? Who is live on Twitch that we might want to raid? Let's see here. Flygon's doing Mega Drive stuff, looks like, so why not go there? Looks good enough to me. Thank you very much, everyone, one more time. Let me just find correct window here. And I'll see you guys out. We're getting Twitch ads here. All right. Hop on over here, and I can properly say goodbye, everyone. See you guys next time.